Okay, and welcome to episode number 10 of Shockwaves. I'm one of your hosts, Rob Galluzzo. Elric, Kane, our third co-host, will be joining us later for the interview portion of this episode. But sitting with me right now is the editor-in-chief of Blumhouse.com, Rebekah McKendry.
What up?
Howdy.
How you doing?
I'm pretty good. It's been a hectic week, but you've been traveling.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I got home at about 1 last night. It was super late. But I have been in Montreal for the past week at the Fantasia Film Festival.
Fantasia, first time there?
It was, honestly, I have not been out of the country in so long, especially to a area that does not speak English. And so it was like insane for me just getting off the plane and being like, I have a blister. I need to go find a Band-Aid. And going up to somebody and being like, where are your Band-Aids? And having them not actually. If you get in Montreal, like the main city of Montreal, everyone speaks English, but as soon as you get a little bit outside of it, they don't. And some people in Montreal, like people at our hotel, did not speak English, like the actual employees. So finding a Band-Aid was a trip. They're called pastilles, by the way. Pastilles and tissue.
You were with Ryan Turek, our fourth host.
Yes.
And you got stopped at the airport, which apparently happens to you every time.
Single time.
You were shady. You were a shady person.
I'm always shady. No, I've determined, it's this, I have to take like asthma medication with me. So I walk in and I've got like, plus I also have to take an EpiPen. So like when you go through my luggage, I've got like needles and inhalers and vials with liquids in them. So yeah, I just look shady from the get-go.
Yeah, I don't trust you.
And so once again, I got searched. They had to stand there for 20 minutes while they, brush through my hair because I've got things hidden in my hair and things like that. But my husband, who actually kind of looks like a shady guy, like he seriously looks like he's tried every drug in the world. He never gets stopped. So, like, we wanted to bring home a bunch of Kinder eggs from my daughter, which are illegal in the U.S., by the way. But she absolutely... Are you
admitting to this now on the...
I am admitting to this on air. He had a couple in his suitcase that I was not aware of, and no one stopped him. So great. We made it back with, like, 2 Kinder eggs, and
Amazing.
I am admitting this on air.
Oh, boy.
But had they been in my bag, shit would have blown up. Like, it would have been crazy. So, yeah. But, so that was the airport adventure. But yeah, so then once we finally got to the, actual fest, it was amazing. I watched 7 films a day, every day I was there. So,
how does it work? Cause I've never been to this one. Actually, I've never really been to a full-on film festival. I've been to ones around town, but how does this one work? Like, how many films do they show? How many theaters are they showing it in? That sort of deal.
Well, they have 2 main theaters, but the other really cool thing that they do is because the festival runs 3 weeks, and most of the critics are only there for a couple days stretch. So, like, I came in for what they call the market, which is like where they've got all of these filmmakers pitching stuff. So I came in for that because I wanted to be there for the market and the pitches and everything and find out like what these upcoming projects were. So you're only there for a 5-day stretch of this 3-week festival. So what they do is really cool. They set up this thing called the screening room. And you walk in and they literally have like 10 monitors set up and you can walk in and see just about every film that is playing in the festival there. And you sit in front of a monitor with a pair of headphones and it's dark and you watch the film there and then you go and you get some lunch and you come back and you watch another and you go and you have some coffee and come back and watch another. And that is where I saw most of the stuff I saw, was in that screening room because the actual screenings, they might do 5 to 6 films a day, but these are mixed. They're not all horror. Some might be comedy, some might be shorts collections, some might be documentary. But I kind of just camped out in the screening room because I could just watch things back to back in breadth and just keep going through the whole thing. So yeah, it was great.
Cool.
So yeah.
So what were the movies that stood out to you?
So,
what should we be looking out for?
Yeah, so pull out your pens and papers, guys. I'm about to throw a whole bunch of movies at you. This is not everything I saw, but these are definitely the ones that I think would be most notable for our fans that they would be most into. And I have to start with the one that was probably the most impactful with us, and I did an article on it for Blumhouse, and it kind of blew up. And that is We Are the Flesh. which I knew nothing about going into. I had just we'd been talking, in critics, we were all talking at the bar the night before and things like that. So when I finally got there on Thursday to do my first day of screening, I had heard everybody saying, "Oh, you have to see We Are the Flesh. You have to see it. It's crazy. Go see it. Make sure you see it while you're here." Uh-huh. So as soon as I rolled into the screening room, 9 a.m. on Thursday, I was like, everybody was talking about this one. I'll watch it. Oh my God. It is totally pornographic and totally depraved and sick and just absolutely bizarre and disjointed and crazy. And so that was the very first thing I screened at the festival.
Where is it from?
It is from Mexico, and it is directed by a first-time filmmaker. And it is, you don't really get much backstory. You kind of find out that there's you get the idea that there's this post-apocalyptic backstory. Everything outside is gone, and it's set in this warehouse. And there's this guy there who, and two kids have entered the picture, and they say, hey, if you give us some food, we'll stay around and help you. We just, we're starving and don't want to go back out there. And so it's now this older guy who's kind of weird, and you can tell that he's really crazy. And then these two kids who are a brother and sister, and they are helping him with a project in exchange for food. And they are making a cave-like womb out of broken furniture, cardboard, and a whole bunch of packing tape. And it eventually kind of morphs into a cave. And he is almost godlike. You can tell it's got a lot of biblical undertones to it. He's supposed to be God, but he might be the devil, at times. And you think he's the devil because he eventually convinces them to do all of these horrible, depraved things. Crazy amounts of incest. And I'm talking pornographic incest.
Wow.
And then it gets even weirder and worse. And there's cannibalism and necrophilia. And it just gets batshit crazy.
So something for everyone in the family.
Yeah. That was by far the most extreme film I saw at the festival, and now it's been a week, and I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck happened.
Wow.
And what it meant, and what was going on. And at the same time, it was beautifully shot at some points, and grimy and gritty, yet beautiful, and it was disjointed, and the language disjointed. I don't have a clue what was going on through most of it, but it was impactful.
All right, I'm sold.
So that's We Are the Flesh. The next one that I saw, which was kind of a mixed one for me, but I really liked the guy's other film. It's the same director who did Yellow Brick Road. Which I enjoyed. I gave that one a really positive review from Fango. This one, I loved the premise. It's about a guy who puts out an ad and says, "I will pay $30,000 to anyone who can prove that ghosts are real and there's life after death." And so he gets 3 people, after thousands of inquiries, he gets 3 people that he actually thinks might be legit. And it's kind of him traveling through these 3 people. Uh-huh. Parts of the film work and parts of them don't, but it's got a couple of really good scenes that I think some horror fans are really going to get into.
What's it called?
We Go On.
We Go On.
Mm-hmm. And it's one, I have a feeling that eventually it's going to be one of those that you stumble on Netflix and go, why haven't I heard of this? It's got some pretty decent parts in it.
Was it, it's not faux documentary or
no,
found footage, right?
No, it's definitely, it's shot like a narrative.
Well, I mean, they're looking for ghost hunters.
No, and it sounds like it could be shot like a documentary. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely shot as a narrative. Parts of it work better than others, but it will be something that some of our fans are definitely going to be into.
Okay.
I saw Lights Out, which I think we'll probably discuss more on the next show, so I'm going to save that one to the next show. But I will just...
I know Elric saw it too, so we should all 3 of us should talk about it.
Yeah, I will just say the audience loved that one. I actually didn't see that one at the festival. It wasn't playing while I was there, and it wasn't available in the screening room, so I actually snuck away and saw it in an actual Montreal theater while I was there. And it was packed. And everybody went ape over it. So, yeah, it was a trip.
Yeah, I saw it locally, too. And all I'll say is, I'll quote Peter Block from our last episode. He said, a movie doesn't have to be perfect to play perfectly. Mm-hmm. And that's totally apt here. I mean, it's not going to change horror or anything. But it's a really great, well-made, fun movie. And it just killed with an audience.
Yeah.
The audience I saw it with were going nuts. So, we'll talk about that with Elric next week.
From the shorts panels, and I saw a couple of the shorts panels, 2 that really stood out for me were both from the women directors panel, Man Who Caught a Mermaid, which is Australian, I think, and Shorty. So if you see either of those playing at festivals near you, definitely check them out. And as soon as they get posted online, I'll post them up on Blumhouse.
Cool.
Dwarvenaut is not specifically horror, but I have to mention it just because I thought it was so fun. It is a documentary about a guy who I think he's based in Brooklyn who created his own Dungeons and Dragons toys and then did a Kickstarter to kind of make it even bigger. And it's about his own Dungeons and Dragons company. And it's awesome because it's kind of the culture behind Dungeons and Dragons and the people who play it. And it was a really fun doc. So I have to mention that one. Embers was bleak, but it ended up being one of my favorite films of the festival. And some of the critics I talked to weren't as into it as I was, but I really dug it. It is a post-apocalyptic world, but the virus that people have been infected with causes them to only have short-term memory. So things like, you got to think like Memento or Finding Nemo or Dory. It's that same kind of thing. So you might be wandering with, your spouse, your husband and wife, and he might go look for food somewhere. And while he's gone, completely forget who you are. So
wow.
It's really kind of bleak, but in that regard, it's got some really cool stuff to it. So I liked that one a lot. This one, Rob, you will enjoy. It's not specifically horror, but it's got definitely a horror tone to it. Exclusive Beat the Devil's Tattoo. And I know it's a weird kind of weirdly connected name, but
That's
it is
the name of it?
That is the name. The Exclusive Beat the Devil's Tattoo. It's South Korean. And it is about,
sold.
Yeah, I know, right? It is about a journalist, who's really trying to, break into the newspaper world and get a big story. And he's on the beat of this serial killer. And while researching it, he realizes that this guy that they think is the serial killer probably isn't the serial killer, but in order to keep getting the story, he kind of creates part of it. And it gets bigger and bigger where that blows up. And so he then has to create a little bit more. And you kind of get the idea that the police, because he's been creating these kind of serial killer-esque things, trying to get the bigger stories, like the police might be starting to look at him as the serial killer. It's got a lot of really cool stuff to it. I loved that one just because it was kind of tones of the paper, but with a serial killer.
Right.
So it was really cool.
Since you mentioned South Korean, I got to mention this. My good friend, Mike Cuccinati, the co-creator of Icons of Fright, created this little game, and I've done terrible at it already, which I thought I wouldn't, but essentially it's, he'll name a title and he'll say, is it a South Korean movie or a Morrissey Smith title, song title? So, There's a Light That Never Goes Out. Or
we kind of need to do this.
Sea.
I kind of want him to shape this into a quiz for the website.
That'd be pretty funny.
I think this would be a trip.
Is it a Morrissey Smith song title or a South Korean movie title?
I love it. Yes, we're doing it. And I have another South Korean movie, which does not have a weird title. This one's just called The Piper.
Okay.
And it's bleak, but it's good. It's about a guy whose son is very sick, and they're kind of wandering the countryside looking for the shaman, this kind of special magical doctor. And they find him in this village that has been completely overrun with carnivorous rats. They're just plagued with them. And the guy's a musician, and he says, you know what? I'll play my flute, and I will lead all of the rats out of your town. But as he's kind of preparing to do this, he discovers that this town has crazy dark secrets, and there's reasons that the rats are there.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's definitely a darker one, but really cool. A Japanese film that I saw that I really enjoyed called The Inerasable, which focuses on a writer. And she's researching a ghost story, and it's kind of if The Grudge kept going for 7 generations before anybody discovered it, and then decided to trace it back through all 7 generations.
Wow.
So she's trying to she knows there's this curse and haunting going on. And it jumps locations, but it seems to follow people, it reattaches itself to people. So she's tracing it back through all of these generations of people. It's a bit slow moving. It's definitely more kind of arty and not as scary as I would have thought, but it's cool the way that they connect together. I Am Not a Serial Killer is from the U.S. That one is about a serial killer. He's a teenager.
He's not one.
Yeah, well, this is the thing.
Title's confusing me.
It's a teen, and he has homicidal tendencies. He definitely is kind of a killer. And to kind of keep his mind from going in that direction, he realizes that there is another serial killer in his town, and he sets out to figure out who it is. And so
very dexterous.
Yeah, it's very dexterous. Really cool. One of my favorite moments in it that I was not expecting is there is an old man who lives across the street that he becomes really good friends with, played by Christopher Lloyd.
Oh.
And I swear, it's Christopher Lloyd's best performance.
Wow.
It's amazing. He stole the movie, and he's not even the prominent part of the marketing. And I'm why not? He is amazing in this movie. So definitely check that one out. Psychonauts is a cartoon about cats and rabbits, but it's about drug addiction. And I'll only mention that one briefly because it's not horror, but it's really bizarre in that regard because you're watching these cute and adorable little animals tell this story about drug addiction. And it really kind of reshapes and makes you think addiction. Tank 432 is a British film that I enjoyed. It's about, it kind of opens in a war environment and you've got this platoon running from this unseen enemy. And you kind of get that the enemy is kind of sci-fi futuristic because they're monsterish. They can appear, they don't like sneak up on you, they just blip and they're right there in front of you. And they're running through this kind of countryside and they end up taking refuge inside of an old military tank and they get stuck in there. Okay. So it's then like 6 people and a couple of like captives stuck inside this tank trying to get out, but they can't get out because the doors are jammed shut. But do they want to get out because they see the enemy closing in all around them? But while they're in there, they start finding things in the tank that make them really question what's going on, the war that's going on, and who the enemy is. So yeah, it's kind of a cool little mystery to unsolve. And then Trash Fire.
Oh yeah,
Ricky Bates' new one, which is just batshit crazy. I mean, the audience loved it. It is just insane. It is about a couple that is highly dysfunctional and about to break up, but then they find out that they're pregnant. And so they decide to go back to the town that the guy was raised in and kind of bury some old demons he has. And so they go to visit his grandmother and see his sister. And his whole backstory is that his parents died in a fire long ago that he thinks he started. And he's going back to kind of bury these demons. And it's just insane.
And his sister survived the fire, right?
With 80% burns.
Yeah.
And so she's kind of like locked in a room and hasn't really seen the light of day since he left.
Yeah, and that's Annabelle McCord from Excision. Yeah. I loved Excision. Suburban Gothic I like, but not as much as Excision because it's a different type of movie. But I haven't seen this yet, but I read the script like years ago and thought it was really kind of crazy and definitely in line with Excision.
Yeah, I enjoyed Suburban Gothic more because it's definitely more kind of a quirky horror comedy.
Yeah.
This I will call a horror comedy, but it goes to kind of the batshit levels that Excision does. Yeah. So it's definitely more in line with that. But I saw it at one of the later shows on Saturday night and the audience went nuts for it. It was a packed house. It was in the big theater, so it was just completely crazy.
Cool.
Good one.
Go Ricky Bates.
Yeah. And then the last one I will mention, and then 2 that I didn't get to see that I definitely should mention. But this one I did see. It's a documentary, and I'm mentioning it because it's got a cool backstory, and it's blowing up on the Blumhouse site right now. La Rage du Demon. And the concept of it, it's a documentary / mockumentary. They haven't really said much about it. But it's supposed to be about this George Méliès film that was lost long ago. George Méliès being the guy who made like Trip to the Moon. And he was just an early filmmaker who focused on horror and comedy and weird fantasy stuff.
Right.
And supposedly he made this film called The Fury of the Demon. And when he screened it back in the late 1800s, the audience went nuts and people started like beating the shit out of each other. They went all like Event Horizon. Nice. And then the film was lost. And then supposedly it resurfaced in 1939 and was shown before a Todd Browning movie in New York. Once again, the theater went nuts. People ripped out their hair, beat each other. It was total anarchy. And then the theater burnt down and a couple people actually died in the fire.
Oh my God.
And then supposedly this rare film collector named George Wallace found a copy of it and screened it for a bunch of French film critics and academics in 2012. And once again, they went nuts and because they can interview them, they're all like, I don't really remember what happened that night. It was just crazy. And so, the documentary looks at this film, but the majority of the documentary focuses on George Méliès. So it gives like George Méliès this whole backstory and everything about him.
But it's real or is that a mockumentary?
It's questionable.
It's questionable.
It's questionable.
Yeah.
But I mean, like everyone who's involved with with it swears it's real. So it's kind of like, I'll call it questionable.
Okay.
But there's a really cool legend there. So that's what I put up on the site was like, regardless of what you think, it's a cool legend. So let's talk about the legend element. And that is what I really enjoyed because they do get into, and they also, bring up the fact that like on the film, there are certain, though it has George Méliès' name on it, there are reasons to think that he didn't actually do it. That it was done by one of his students because he was teaching film classes at the time. And so they point to this one student named Sicarius who was just completely obsessed with the occult and Satanism and all this stuff. And could he have made such a film? So regardless, it's a cool legend. See the doc for the legend.
Yeah.
And then the last two I'm going to mention because I didn't get to see them because they weren't available in the screening room and they weren't playing while I was there, but everybody was talking about them. The first one is Lore. And this is, I think it's Polish. I don't want to 100% adhere to that, but I'm pretty sure it's a Polish film. And it is about sirens who form a rock band. And I've been told that it's shot like a whole bunch of music videos strung together, but it's sirens who form a rock band to lure people in.
Okay.
And everybody was going nuts over it and said it was amazing. The other one is called Parasite. And this is based off a Japanese manga, and it's about a guy whose hand turns into a creature. And other
action?
people, it's live action. The effects are done by Jim Henson Company, and they look
weird,
amazing. They look ridiculously good.
Wow.
I saw a very brief copy of this at AFM probably 2 years ago. I saw like a 10-minute cut of it, and it was ridiculous when I saw it at AFM. And I was so upset that it was not screening while I was there. But it just looks kind of fun Japanese manga.
Wow.
I really want to see that one. Parasite with a Y. So yeah, that is the rundown of the things that I saw that just really stood out for me.
That was a lot to soak in, man.
Oh my gosh, that's why I said pens and pencils out.
Yeah, all right.
Rewind that back if you need to.
I wrote them all down, so that's pretty epic. Okay, well, yeah, I'm really looking forward to a lot of this. In particular, that doc you mentioned, and I definitely want to see Trash Fire. That's the one. Those are the two. So stick around. We are going to magically go to an interview. We actually already pre-recorded this with Joe Begos and Graham Skipper, and it's a really fun chat. Those guys have a new movie out called The Mind's Eye, which is out on VOD and limited theatrical on August 5th. And Joe is kind enough to bring a bottle of whiskey. So if you didn't already judge from the photo that we posted that's going along with this episode, things get a little incoherent by the end, so you'll definitely want to listen.
It's gonna be fun.
You listen through because it gets really, really fun. Actually, yeah, we delve into a lot of Stuart Gordon stuff, which is a lot of fun. So, sit tight. Okay, and welcome to the interview segment of this episode of Shockwaves. We're very excited. Very excited. Elric, are you excited?
I don't know, man. I'm just like lukewarm. I'm halfway there.
That's not polite. Our guest brought us whiskey and everything.
Yeah,
you gotta be a lot nicer, man. But,
now that we're crossing streams with old guests, I'm excited about this concept.
This is because we've actually had both of these guests on our previous show, Killer POV, before, for separate episodes, but we brought them together specifically for their new film, The Mind's Eye. Welcome to the show, Graham Skipper.
Hello.
And the writer-director, Joe Begos.
What up?
Well, what up? So, I kind of want to bring people up to speed that might not have heard you guys on the old show, and eventually delve into kind of the beginning again of our mutual love of horror, because obviously we all know each other outside of doing the show and stuff. But let's talk a little bit about The Mind's Eye first, because this is I really liked Almost Human, and I remember when Joe described that movie to me, it was kind of like, an alien movie that gets crossed with Maniac, and I'm just like, that's fucking cool. Like, now we got like this weird hybrid alien slasher movie. And then this one, as a lot of people know, I'm a huge fan of the Scanners franchise, so much so that I actually prefer the sequels to the original, including Scanners 3. So and I hope you take this the right way. I think you made the best Scanner sequel of all time. It's better than all those other movies.
Well, if it's better than if you think the sequels are better than the original, then yeah, technically I made the best Scanners movie of all time. So.
I actually like it.
Well, you have a better lead
Scanners
than the original Scanners. That's
for sure. That's for sure.
Was it Stephen lacking talent?
Still lacking that one movie he did. Let's talk a little bit about how this happened. Because obviously, you're a big fan of Cronenberg and just horror from that era. I mean,
Wait, he beat the shit out of someone for Cronenberg once.
Did he really?
I think we should start there. He beat the living shit out of some other filmmaker in L.A., some guy I don't even know the name. Some Lynch fan, some David Lynch fan got the shit. Tell us about that. Let's start with your segue to Cronenberg. I don't know this story.
What is this?
Well, this was at Fantastic Fest when I was there for Mind's Eye.
I know.
And my buddy Mickey Keating, who we consistently argue about the merits. He's like a huge art film fan, and I like schlock and, garbage action movies and all that. So we always argue about stuff. And we got in the ring, and, I was just sick of him running his mouth about Lynch being better than Cronenberg, so we got in the ring, and I beat the fucking shit out of him.
Let me take the second to go on the record and go, even though I was happy that you beat him because I don't know him, like I know you, I'm more of a Lynch fan, too. So when I first saw the debate, I was like, "Oh, I'm a Lynch guy, but Joe's going to win the fight."
Well, right in front of the fight was Guillermo del Toro and Nick Refn, and originally our fight was supposed to be because Mickey does not like Paul Verhoeven, so we're going to argue about Paul Verhoeven, me calling him a genius and Mickey calling him a hack. But Mickey's like, "Oh, they're all going to hate me." So right when we started, I just want to let everybody know that the first fight that we were going to do was Mickey saying that Paul Verhoeven was a hack, and immediately Guillermo del Toro and Nick Refn are like, "Boo!"
Oh, yeah.
And then Mickey called Cronenberg an exploitation director, and Refn was screaming angrily.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was great. It was great.
Wow. Quite
I
an audience
love
for
that you
one.
actually knocked someone out for that film. So there you go. That's your context.
And also, in TIFF, for the premiere of the movie, we all know Jason Eisner, and he came to the pre-party with Brandon Cronenberg. Mm-hmm. And Brandon did not know that he was coming to a pre-party for a movie that was basically
Brandon
mimicking
Cronenberg was at that party?
Yeah, and Jason introduced me to him, and I'm like, dude, you gotta come see the movie. So I gave him a ticket, and he's like, oh, cool. And I was like showing him my Videodrome tattoo, and he's like, oh god, this kid's fucking weird. Yeah. And then he came to the movie, and radio silence afterwards, so I assume he was not a fan of my dad.
It's like, did you trace my dad's work?
Yeah, so.
Wow.
I think you improved.
But he did come to it, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I mean, but how did the story for this come about? Because I think what I'm most curious about is you had success with Almost Human. You pretty much made this movie yourself with your friends. Like you got together, you got if I remember correctly, some friends back home helped invest in the movie, and you made it on your own. It screened at festivals. You got it out there. And I'm always curious when you get a little bit of heat on your first film, how difficult is that next step? I mean, were there people talking to you about like, oh, you should do this or this and that? Because this also seems similar in the sense that you're like, well, fuck it, I'm just going to do another movie like the first one in terms of with my friends and kind of doing it on my own terms.
Yeah, in a sense, it is easier to get a second movie going because I was offered a lot of garbage that I could have just done that would have been, bigger budget than Mind's Eye. Nothing huge, but I was getting offered a lot of crap like that. I didn't really want to do it, so theoretically it was easier to get a second movie made, but I was very intent on doing something original that I wrote, especially after seeing the crap that was being offered and seeing like the original scripts that were selling and were getting financed. I'm like, what the fuck, this is garbage. But then it was actually harder to get The Mind's Eye made because I couldn't just go, all right, let's see, I got a credit limit of this, I got this, all right, I get this, and I can make it for that, because there's so much more to the movie, so it was so much harder to get that money. And then the thing is all the extra money we had, because there's so many practical explosions and car flips. Like, it was almost the same size production as Almost Human, or it actually was the same size production as Almost Human, but everybody got paid, and then the additional money that we got went to putting people on wires and flipping cars and getting dynamite stuffed in fake bodies and, plowing miles and miles of fucking snow, which you didn't budget in when you didn't know that there was going to be a goddamn blizzard. So yeah, I mean, I guess theoretically it is easier to get a movie made, but for me, I'm a fucking stubborn bastard, and it was a lot harder. And and then I made this movie, and I want to do the same thing where I'm getting offered other movies that I can go do. I've gotten offered a couple things that have already been made and are coming out since I finished Mind's Eye, but they just weren't things I want to do, and I'm like in the same position where it's like I'm slowly putting together another movie that, because I just want my next movie to be something that I did like that, so that's the goal.
Okay. Well, I mean, with in terms of the story for this one, because I know you've obviously been writing several things. You as a filmmaker, you always have ideas. You always have a few things that you're working on and hammering out. But I believe this one you kind of wrote at Elric's non-existent cafe now, but at the Jump Cut Cafe
and the ghost
for the ghost of your old cafe.
Yeah.
So was it something that you kind of were batting around for a bit, or did it start from scratch, literally at the cafe?
I had always. So how I kind of come up with ideas for movies is like a subgenre that I really want to see, like with Almost Human. It's like, God, I love fucking alien abduction movies. Nobody does them. I love slasher movies. I love the Terminator. I'm just going to go make something like that. And then there's just such a lack of telekinesis movies. And I actually hadn't started writing it yet, but when people started asking me, they're like, oh, so what are you going to do next? I was like, I kind of, I think I want to do a telekinesis movie, like Scanners meets Death Wish. And like, that just sounded cool to me. So after we finished the festival, I started writing it like that. And for those of you who have seen the movie, like, it just took so many different spawns. The actual original movie opened with the home invasion. Like, they arrived at the house and opens with the home invasion, and it was almost like, a big home invasion, and then he goes back to the institute. So, like, it just took on a lot of different iterations, but that's kind of where it spawned, where it's like that seed of an idea, and it took me a while, because I came up with ideas for set pieces before I had a story.
He drank a lot of iced tea.
Yeah.
Getting to that
Put
story.
this thing together.
Well, I could only drink so many because you charged me $2.50 every time I wanted a refill.
I don't believe we did. I think that's a lie.
I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
I believe anytime I was there, I was like, he gets it free.
But he was never there. Just.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, that's why it's gone, man.
Man, you should have worked harder, Kane.
But yeah, I was there almost every day writing for a while.
Uh-huh.
As long as Mike Williamson wasn't fucking bugging me.
Yeah.
And, I mean, was it always a given? I mean, Graham obviously was in your first film, and you guys have known each other for a while. Both used to work with Stuart Gordon, which we'll get into a little bit later, but kind of a given, like, that this is your guy, that you wanted to be
Yeah,
in the movie?
I definitely wrote it for him, like, from the start, so.
And
Thanks, Bay.
What did you think when he pitched the idea to you? Because, I mean, also, you're just as equally a big fan of these movies that he's citing as influences. So.
It sounded fucking awesome. I mean, he goes Scanners meets Death Wish, and I go, that sounds fucking incredible. I mean, it's like, as a genre fan who is also an actor, I'm going, I get an opportunity to be in a badass telekinesis movie, and, I'd never gotten to do, stunts before, and I'd never, gotten to do, anything with like this kind of level of special effects. It was awesome.
And intensity. Like, I think of the first film as Almost Human as a perfectly natural fit for you. Like, your best qualities come through in that role, and it's funny, and all the things that I could see from Reanimator, the musical, But this role is, to me, the opposite of that, and it's intense, and you're dramatic there's almost no levity with your character from memory. Yeah. And I actually thought it was really good for you because you see this totally different quality.
Thanks. Yeah, I really, Joe gave me a character that I think had a lot of depth to him and had a lot of interesting stuff going on, and he sort of being involved from the beginning, I was able to really work on this for a while, and it was just really cool to be a part of that process as Joe was putting it together. But yeah, it's fucking awesome. I'm reading car flips and towers of fire and, and...
Is there any, I'm trying to think of the history of films, but is there anything with that kind of budget that's ever had that many effects that you could think of? Because I can't think of anything quite that cheap.
Yeah, I don't know.
That level.
Deadbeat at Dawn has a lot of
Jim
cool
Van
stuff in it, because, he's jumping off bridges and, so that's sort of, I guess that's kind of the closest. I hope my movie is a little more cinematic than, as much as I love Deadbeat at Dawn, but, there's a lot of crazy stuff in that movie, but Evil Dead, the original, was kind of our budget, but inflation, it was like $2 million,
Yeah.
so,
Wow.
and our movie was like 300 and change, so.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot going on in that film.
And I've seen some of the Q&As you've done for both of these films, and in particular this one, I think the thing that really stands out for me is how impressive the effects work is. I mean, you're watching a movie like this where essentially some gory shit is going to happen and people's heads are going to explode, and it's just you pulled it off. You know how to shoot gore, essentially.
Well, also, the effects guys are just fucking, they were saying, they're like, I'm so glad you know how to shoot this stuff. I'm like, I'm so glad you guys know how to sculpt it good.
And actually pull it off.
Yeah, where'd they come from, those guys? Because
they actually did Stakeland, so they did a lot of Glass Eye Pick stuff, and so they're based out of upstate New York, which is kind of close to where we're shooting. So I actually really wanted them from the start, and I was kind of like, oh no, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get these guys. And they ended up doing a couple of effects for Keating's Darling, which looked phenomenal, especially for considering how low that budget was. So I called them up, and I went down to their shop, and I pitched the movie to them and all the effects. And, Brian Spears is the most awesome guy in the world, but he was just like, man, we can't do this. We can't pull this off. And we kind of just worked through it. And literally, they pulled off everything in there. And then while we were shooting, I threw stuff at them on set that they then pulled off as angry as they were.
Wow.
But they fucking they did everything, and they came in on budget. And, so, I want to push them even further on the next one because I know now what they're capable of.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna...
but I guess I wanted to hit on why that was so important to you because because nowadays it's like I don't want to call it lazy filmmaking, but these days
it's lazy filmmaking.
It's lazy filmmaking. All right, you could say it then. No, because you were very adamant about that after this played at Beyond Fest. That was the screening that I saw, and people these days will have minimal budget to shoot something. And then you'll get to those moments, and it'll be kind of CG enhanced, or they'll trick it however they shoot it in the camera and stuff. But you were like, fuck it, we're gonna do all these effects. That's the point. And honestly, it shows. Because no matter what, when you walk out of the movie, that's what you remember and think about, oh man, how cool was that one shot in that scene where that happened. So why was it so important for you? Because I feel like you're proving, you can do it if you just have the time and patience to.
Yeah. I agree. It's just super important to me because that's the stuff that I grew up on, and that's what attracted me initially. How cool this stuff could get, and then we really took for granted all that stuff. Like, I was watching Wishmaster 6 months ago maybe, and like, that was a movie that I thought was a throwaway movie, and then you watch it, and it's got incredible animatronics and puppet effects, and it's like, we thought this was garbage, but I'd kill to like get stuff like this coming out now, and I just, and I feel like there's just, filmmaking has gotten horror filmmaking has gotten so generic lately too, so I feel like all the cool stuff that really drew me to horror doesn't really exist in many horror movies anymore. And also, as a teenager, we just built all the effects in our kitchen, and we were able to fucking do it. And Peter Jackson could do it, like, in his mom's kitchen. So, and any time that you see a horror movie that has a $20 million budget and it's digital effects, it looks like garbage. So why is our $300,000 movie going to have good CGI? I know how much all these effects cost. And CG is not cheap either, so it's like, yeah, we can spend $400 to do this gag and do 3 extra hours of shooting, or you can spend $2,000 to make it look like trash in post. So, I mean, I don't know.
The choice is yours, people. He's laid it down.
Well, and I think, too, one of the things about Joe's directing style is that he really, like, he plans for the time that is required to get these shots, to make these effects look really good. That was the stuff that we would really spend the time to make sure it looked right. And I feel like it's probably very easy to, spend a whole bunch of time on something else and then sort of leave the effect to the end. It's just one shot, it's just one thing. And then you sort of screw yourself because of course it's not going to look good because you're not taking the time and the care to do it. And obviously, Joe cares a great deal about this type of stuff. And so that was the stuff that we, probably spent the most time on, was just making sure all that looked right.
Yeah, and it shows. I mean, like, you see some of those gags and you're like, oh, they like actually, they really planned this out meticulously because it's not just the last shot of the day or whatever. I had known nothing about this when I went to go see it initially. And one of the great joys for me, as a film fan, I see Larry Fessend's name in the credits, and I get all excited because I love Larry, both personally as an actor. I'm like, I wonder where he's going to be in this movie. And he's not showing up. And then Graham's character talks about going home to see Dad. And I was like, oh my God, is Larry Fessend going to be his dad in this movie? And he was. So we got to talk a little bit about that.
And it's also where you start in the narrative of the film. That's where you care. Like, the moment I'm in the movie because it's a fun movie, but the moment I care is the exact moment the two of you connect and there's certain things you bond over. And I remember just going, oh, suddenly my heart, like, kind of just drops into the movie. And I thought that was pretty cool that you can get someone that late in the movie emotionally tagged into your movie. So I thought that's because Larry's fucking awesome.
I mean, Larry's amazing. I mean, like, to be, I had certainly been a fan of his, and I was, probably most excited about that day when I knew Larry was going to be there. And I think we didn't have him for that long. We had him for like a couple days.
So the script was 105 pages. Larry shot all of 22 of his pages in 3 days of a 40-day schedule. So that's how much we do effects. Like, we're stretching out the schedule.
Wow.
And it was like, okay, this is the Larry day. This is the Larry day, and then we get there and he's just the nicest guy. And you roll camera on him, and even when the camera's on you and he's just, feeding you dialogue, like, he's so emotionally there. And it's so present. And and then off camera, he was so easy to talk to and just, loved, I talked to him for hours just about his movies and about, him, and I don't know, I was a total fanboy. But then, I mean, the best, there was a great moment where, like, I'm supposed to be reacting to seeing him, like, on the other side of the room, and doesn't need, he doesn't need to be there, laying on the ground, whatever. He's like, no, I'll lay here, whatever, come on. And same thing, like, he's getting tackled to the ground. We're like, okay, let's get a mattress. He goes, I don't need a fucking mattress, come on. And it was just such a great, example of somebody who everyone's ears perked up and everyone went, oh, okay, this is how you make a movie. And he was totally supportive of Joe, like, there was, it was always, oh yeah, this looks fucking awesome, and
he was like taking videos of me operating the camera and stuff. He's like, man, this is so cool. I'm gonna send this to my kid, man. So like, and then he's asking me all kinds of questions, and I'm just like, because I was so nervous too. I'm like, oh, this guy's been directed by so many people. Like, now I have to direct him on this tiny movie. And
what do you think? What do you think it is about him that makes him so amenable to helping indie filmmakers? Like, remember, Ty was one of the first he kind of started helping, but and being part of their projects. Do you think he's just like loves the energy coming back to his own work, or is there something more at play?
I think he just genuinely loves independent film and independent filmmaking, and just making cool original stories, and that's what he cares about most,
Well, and I think too it's not just that he loves it, but I think that he cares a great deal about the fact that people are independently making movies. It's like I think that's the thing is he he really knows the importance of that and how hard it is to do it. And especially, as somebody who, so many of his movies, I'm sure it was torture trying to get that stuff made.
Yeah.
Because he's not making conventional films.
Not at all.
At all. And
well, unlike you, he self-financed the first one, or maybe a couple, I don't know, but it definitely Habit. I mean, and that I view that as one of the greatest movies. Not just horror movies, just it's a great movie.
Oh yeah, it's really he was such an inspiration. Just to me, just being on set with him and just going, I want to be like this on every set that I'm on. That's how I want to be.
Was he more inspiring or less than Jeremy Gardner?
Well,
Like on a scale.
Jeremy Gardner had that sexy butt.
Uh-huh.
And so I got to give him credit for that. Because he would shake it and dance around and stuff.
He's a pretty good dancer. So.
Yeah, he's a good dancer.
At least there's that.
Yeah.
Jeremy was very upset that every single article of clothing we gave him for his role was shit brown. But I refer to it as Cronenberg brown. He referred to it as shit brown. So.
Right,
Yeah, you need more wallpaper to match Cronenberg.
Yeah.
That's
Well, we had wood
perfect.
paneling. So
Okay, that's
worked
good.
out.
Yeah.
And I mean, did you cast this kind of, because it's mostly familiar faces, a lot of people that I know you're friendly with, so was it just a matter of, well, fuck, I'm friends with this person, I know they could do the gig, and I want them on my movie? Or was there like a audition process or anything like that?
No, we actually didn't do any auditioning whatsoever. I had a few of the roles in mind. Lauren came on sort of late in the game, but she was always in the back of my mind.
She's great.
Yeah, she's really good. I'm happy. that
Lauren
she-
Ashley Carter from Darling, which is out now. If you haven't seen it, go see it.
It's on Netflix,
it's
right?
on my Netflix.
I
Yeah,
haven't
it's on
watched it
Netflix.
yet.
It's amazing.
And Larry was actually originally supposed to play the sheriff, which, thinking back now, it's like, oh, that's kind of derivative. He was supposed to sheriff. And then somebody else was supposed to play the dad, and they dropped out. And I go, I think I'm going to have Larry play the dad. And I called him up, and he's like, that sounds awesome. He's like, so how do you want me to play it? And I'm like Dennis Hopper in True Romance, he goes, just like I was thinking. Cool, man.
I love that because it's been a while since I've seen the movie because it was, I guess, Beyond Fest was
October.
Yeah, last October. But
Jesus Christ.
I just
9 months
remember
ago.
the first. I can't wait to watch it again when it's officially out, August 5th. But I just remember his choices always amaze me. Like the first moment that you guys are in the room together and like he's just kind of nervous, like God damn it, like sort of vibe. I just remember like, man, like I knew immediately, like, I knew everything I needed to know about you two from that first moment. That it was your dad, you've been estranged for a while, like that whole deal. I really love him, and I hope more people use him. Like, I just saw, Ty's new movie, In a Valley of Violence.
Can't wait to see that.
And I didn't know he was in it. Like, he
I didn't
popped
know that
up
either.
as he's kind of like one of the townspeople.
How could he
thugs.
not be in a Western? Look at
I
that
know,
guy.
and I was like, oh my god,
perfect
yes,
for
I
it.
want more Westerns with
Yeah.
It's so
Larry
funny because
President.
I saw a screening of In the Valley of Violence like right after we wrapped Mind's Eye, so I was fresh off of working with Larry and we were cutting, so like I was seeing all this footage, and then he popped up in Valley of Violence and I'm like, holy shit, like that is like he's just playing Larry.
But you could drop Larry into any
Yeah.
time period or whatever, and he could do it all.
And he had
which is pretty amazing.
He has a fake tooth, like that sometimes he doesn't have in, like in a lot of roles he doesn't have it. So we asked him to have the fake tooth in, and then he gets
Oh yes, yeah.
the butt with the end of the gun, and he spits the tooth out, and it just works free effect.
perfect,
Really
yeah.
That's really funny. And if you can't say this, we could always cut it out. But I remember you telling me a long time ago that you lived in the same town as James Woods at one point, because this is the Cronenberg connection, or
Yeah, he still lives in Rhode Island, but he's like,
similar to where you're shooting.
yeah, we always had this dream of getting James Woods in a movie,
Yeah.
but he went a little up the deep end recently.
Well, I remember you saying something like
Oh.
you were going to just wait till he's at a restaurant and just approach James
Yeah,
Woods
like,
about
do
the,
the-
and I,
like the-
I
the
love
bow-
that idea, you know.
Like do the bowfinger thing?
Yeah,
maybe? Like
like-
just start shooting him.
Well,
and-
when we still lived in Rhode Island, I was, it must have been 18 or 19, and we were at a fucking Olive Garden, and I hear this voice behind me, and I look, and it's fucking James Woods with his mom. So I turn back to Josh, I'm like, holy shit, dude, look at who that is, and Josh's face just goes red. So, Josh is like, you should approach him. I'm like, I'm not gonna fucking approach him. He's like, you got the video drum tattoo. He's like, yeah, he's gonna fucking think I'm weird as fuck. Like,
Yeah.
so we're walking out, and Josh actually stops, and he goes, oh, Mr. Woods, I just wanted to let you know that we're huge fans. Like, we're not just like saying this, cause like everybody's always like, oh, you're famous, James
Yeah.
Woods. And he's like, Joe's got a video drum tattoo on his arm, so I show him, and James grabs my forearm and brings it close. He's like, holy shit, Mom, look, this kid's got my hand tattooed on his arm. So we actually started talking. We just started talking about Cronenberg and Carpenter, and we were like, dude, you gotta make a Vampires 2. He's like, yeah, well, I want to make it, but if Carpenter ever pulls his ass off his fucking couch and puts the joint out, maybe we can make it. And I'm just like, wow, this is awesome.
Wow.
He was wearing like amber sunglasses with a scarf. And I'm like,
Oh yeah,
I love that
you
guy.
are fucking
got
awesome.
wood, got wood, Begos.
Got a little mahogany going on.
Great
Yeah.
character, one of the best.
Actually, Sam Zimmerman was talking shit on vampires. I'm like,
but
Sam, no!
his character
Vampires
is
is
gold.
alright, yeah,
I haven't
that's
seen it
pretty
recently,
good.
but his character was gold.
I got the blue. That should
Oh,
be
yeah,
a
I
movie
got it,
night.
yeah.
But did you know James Woods was the original choice for Dario Argento's Inferno? He was supposed to be the Lee McCloskey role.
Oh,
Yeah.
Whoa.
I cannot
Can you imagine?
picture that in that movie.
But he almost worked with
Yeah.
with Carpenter, Cronenberg, and
And
Argento.
Argento, that's
Almost,
cool.
almost, which would have been cool.
Oh, and
wonder if he's
Louis
like a
Teague.
I wonder if he's
Got
like a
some-
genre fan.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't
It's
know.
interesting.
Some actors will just show up if you pay them.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but-
he's also one of those guys like Hopper who like think politically change. You know, some of these guys become more conservative the richer they get. You know, that's part of it. You want to defend your wealth. But Dennis Hopper, you know, you look back at his early career, there's no bigger hippie, and then he ends at the end of his career a staunch Republican conservative. So it's like, I don't get it. But you know, I guess
Right.
once you've had a couple threesomes, I guess it loses its interest. I don't know. Christ knows. Can you guys explain that to me?
Well, there was a time me and Joe and Jeremy.
Yeah, and Josh.
Yeah. Well, Josh videotaped.
Oh, I see. Somebody's got it.
Yeah.
And edit.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you after
Okay.
we stop rolling. Yeah.
What was what did you notice much of a difference? Because it's, you know, a bigger scale. Like for me, like where Almost Human ends, just like the moment it ends is right when I'm like fully fucking into it, and that's a good thing in some ways. But it also left me go, I'm ready for the sequel. Like that second, I feel like this film delivers on that promise. Like it delivers all the way to the end of the movie in that way. And so, was there a difference in shooting these? Like you've got a similar kind of crew, you've got similar kind of actors. Did you feel, was it a different kind of shoot? Was it a lot harder for you personally? How'd you feel comparing the shoots?
It was definitely a harder shoot just because it was longer. There was more complications in the weather. Different how it felt. I don't know because I'm so involved in it. You might be able to answer that better, Graham. But
Colder, I can tell that.
yeah.
Colder.
You know, I don't know. I just I don't know. It was different. It was harder in some regards, and in some regards it wasn't. Like,
I feel like it was you know, like Joe said, it was essentially the same sized crew, and which gave it the same general feel of movie making, you know, of you're sort of in this together, and it still had that guerrilla filmmaking vibe, but it was so much more put together just because it had to be. You know, there were so many moving parts, and they did a great job of organizing everything in such a way to where it, you know, it could have so easily gone out of control and off the rails, you know, but everything, you know, was done. It was just done with a you know, a clear goal in mind, and I think that's what, you know, helped by having the smaller crew and having that dedicated group of people was everybody knew what we were going for and what you had to do to get it.
and also, if we need to go out into, you know, waist deep snow, and I'm walking out there with a 60-pound camera on my shoulder, going, "All right, guys, let's go." No, you really have no choice.
Yeah,
You're going to war. You're going to war with them, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about Joe as a director. Is like, you know, we're there. I will never forget this night. There's a fight at a shack. It's me and Brian Morvan in this fight out at the shack, and it was an overnight shoot. And the temperature when Joe and I were driving to set that night, not including wind chill, was negative 27 degrees.
Oh, Christ.
It was so cold, and you know, it was waist deep snow, and you know, you've got to be out there for many hours to shoot this thing. Like, you have to do it, and to see Joe with this camera on his back that's simultaneously shoveling snow off of the thing, saying, "Come on, everybody, we gotta move, like, let's go." How can you not follow that into battle?
Also
Right.
knowing that he literally broke his back after his last movie, and now he's got a camera on his back.
Yeah,
so that's
it's
cool too.
yeah, like really, it you know, and you just like buckle down and you do it, and it was awful and amazing at the same time. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, it's always weird when you see people making these movies behind monitors. Like somebody's just sitting and everyone else is in another room, and I'm always like, what?
It's like,
Why
I
would
be
anyone want
in
to
the
do
scene,
that?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
But also, like you were asking before about how you said that the movie that Almost Human ended just when you
Right,
wanted to. My favorite part of Almost Human was the last 15 minutes where
Yeah.
just like there's all the
I
cross
feel
cutting
like
going on.
it's
But we just didn't have the money to go any further. So
Sure.
for this, for me, pacing and effects and set pieces, like that's what I like. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll be the first to admit it. That's what I fucking just love action set pieces, and I love cross cutting and escalation and effects. Like, so I'm gonna fucking build my movie like that. So for me, this thing is like, all right, we need more action, I need faster escalation, bigger set pieces, so we can keep these elements of the production the same cost, but let's put an extra $200,000 into pyro and effects and shooting schedule so that we can do it all. You know what I mean?
Right.
So essentially we all showed up and it's like, oh, cool, or this movie's 6 times as big. Oh, wait, why is there less crew members around?
We got to blow some shit up, obviously. Graham, did you notice a sense, you know, I always think like from film to film, no matter how small or big it's always a leap for the filmmaker. And I mean, Joe is a fairly confident guy. Did you notice, just like more confidence on this film as opposed to the first one? Because obviously it's your first film, you're a little nervous about things. But, you know, even in the telling of the story, I know when Elric and I saw it together, we laughed, because it was so awesome. I'll call it the sex scene. The way that the sex scene is edited to another character's,
orgasm.
You know, orgasm. Yeah, thank you. It's one of those like quirky, funny, kind of like stylistic choices that, not to say that you weren't capable of doing that in Almost Human, but you know what I mean? It's like, oh, he's comfortable enough to know that this is kind of funny. He's doing this on purpose. He totally plotted this one moment out. And again, that shows confidence, not only as a filmmaker, but, in your voice and being like, fuck it, I find this funny. I think this is kind of funny and cool. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm just curious in terms of, from the first film to the second, difference in his approach?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think we all were more confident, you know? I mean, that was all of our first movie, you know? And you know, just in terms of setting up the shots and making, you know, bold, interesting choices and saying, okay, you know, we're gonna, I mean, even things like, and this will sound so silly, but, you know, on Almost Human, like, there was no dolly track, you know? There was no, you know, it was very much like, let's get the shot, and let's do this, and run a gun, and it was awesome. And then with this, there was definitely, you know, a sense from everyone of going, all right, how do we really, like, make this the best that it can be? And Joe would walk into the room and go, I know how to do it. This is how we'll do it. And he was unafraid to ask that of everyone. You know, that was the thing that I loved the most, is that I feel like, you know, like we're working with, you know, with a stunt coordinator who's worked on all these huge, big budget movies, you know, and he would, you know, tell Joe, like, no, we can't do that. There's no way we can do that. And Joe would go, yeah, we can. You can do it. Make it happen. And that's like...
And he did.
And he did. And it looked great.
He was a stunt coordinator from the fucking Departed in Shutter Island. We were lucky enough to get.
Wow.
And he was amazing. And he would be like, God, I don't know how we're going to do it. And Joe would say, yeah, this is how you can do it. This is, you know, and that takes, you know, fucking confidence and you know, knowledge of how to do this shit. And then we would do it, and everybody at the end, you know, would go, oh yeah, that was great. Man, I'm so glad we took the time and the effort to do that, because it looked awesome. Yeah, it was...
Did you have to kill any stunt darlings? I can't remember, because I saw a really late test cut. I remember, because I think all that was missing is the score, and maybe you made a couple edits. And the score made, you know, an amazing difference to me on the big screen. But were there any major sequences that you had to cut? I remember one of my notes was there was one cut that I thought one thing that I just felt like, I think it was one of the later stunts, somebody up on a wire or something. I was like, maybe for pacing you should move here, but you want to have it all on screen. You want to deliver all these effects.
Well, if you're talking about the stairwell fall,
yeah, I think it's that one. Yeah.
Yeah, we did actually cut that down, because I think you saw the last. We had like 24 hours to log.
Yeah, you were.
And then we cut like a minute and a half out of that scene. And the whole stunt's there, but like the build up to it is, because the thing too is that I didn't take into account is, you know, it's kind of like, oh, we're just going to lift this guy up on the wire, but then you don't realize that not only is he on a wire, but then they need to, like, put all kinds of beams and cranes and shit in, and, like, it limits the shots that I had, because we couldn't afford to rehearse with a stunt coordinator. I was kind of like, here's a script, and he's like, all right, well, how do you want to plan this out? It's my rate per day. I'm like, see you on set. So, like, I wasn't,
there you go.
So that I was like, oh shit, I can't get this shot, so, I guess that I have to just zoom in. So, like, that was really difficult.
So you're a little limited with your,
yeah, so, like, a lot of that's, like, the scene in question that you're talking about, it was hard to kind of block and direct that scene because we were so tight. So, like, stuff like that, we kind of just had to, which was a great learning experience too, because now I've never worked with any of that stuff, and I was just thrown into it to do, like, you know, the stunt coordinator was like, this is literally the biggest, like, the most complicated job I've had in years. And I'm like,
that's wow.
And he's like, I'm going and doing an HBO show. He was bouncing back and forth between Mind's Eye, Joy, the David O. Russell movie, and some HBO show. And he's like, yeah, that thing's fun. He's like, HBO's paying me 10 times what you are, and I'm not going to do shit.
Which I'm sure they also enjoyed doing that. But did anything get lost in, that you just couldn't put in for story reasons, pacing reasons, or is pretty much everything on screen?
Yeah, the only thing we did was kind of lean down scenes, and etch scenes. I don't think we cut out any actual
Well, I mean,
Big
not anything that we filmed that got cut out. I mean, obviously things changed from script,
Yeah.
to filming.
I'm talking more like the stunts and the because
Yeah,
you
that's
put all
all in
that
there.
money and extra time into it.
Yeah,
It's-
that's all in there.
You know.
Oh, actually, no. In the opening scene, I forgot about this. This isn't really a spoiler because it's the first 3 minutes. But Graham is pulled over by the cops, and he throws this one cop against the car. And originally, he lifts the other cop in the air.
Oh yeah.
So the other cop's up in the air while Graham throws him. And like this, it was our first wire stunt. It didn't really look that good, and also the reveal of lifting the person up in the air for the first time comes in that whole home invasion sequence, and it works so much better. So we did cut that out, and the movie's so much better. Like that, well, not the movie,
Like
but
you
the
blew your
opening
load
scene.
too quick with what he can do.
Yeah, it blew the load too quick, and it was the weakest lift in the entire movie, so it was kind of a double-edged sword.
Also, it's
Fucking good.
daytime, right? So I imagine the wire stuff's a little trickier in daytime. I don't know.
It was actually easier because it was overcast, so the wire was just against a gray sky, as opposed to some of the other stuff where it's like they have to match it to like 3 different kinds of wood paneling, carpet blood, so.
Wow. God bless regional film. I mean, it really is, for probably all of us, it's a big reason why we're even into movies, is people who are doing these kind of regional, like, Evil Dead being the most obvious at the time. But, like, it's not dying out, but the kind of filmmaking you're doing with that is dying out for sure. People would say, I've got $8,000, I'll make a feature film, and this isn't a slight on Jeremy, because his is the one of the 1,000 that is actually brilliant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he knows the kind of the restrictions of what he can do, but I just want to see more of that fantasy element to these movies,
Because it's I was paying to make movies my entire life up until the Mind's Eye. Like, I literally paid for everything I made, so I would be doing this no matter what. So, like, I just do it what's the coolest to me. And to me, it's like going off the radar where you don't got to fucking deal with anybody. And it's like, all right, guys, we're all out here in the middle of nowhere. No cell service, and it's a blizzard. Like, you have no choice but to sit here and make this movie kick ass. Like, so let's all band together because... So...
Yeah, I mean, seriously, that was the thing that it was so awesome to be literally living in a house with all of the filmmakers and all your fellow actors, and you are there, and even on your days off, you're hanging out with the people, and you're
we all lived in
sitting
the
there on
Institute.
set.
Oh,
From the
cool.
movie,
Yeah, the Institute is like this big mansion, and we all just lived there, and it was great. And you make breakfast with everyone, and everybody's making dinner together, and everybody, we got all the Narragansett beer we could drink, and we would wrap
Mom's
it,
home cooking?
and
Yeah.
Mom's home
Talking about.
cooking, and
And it's like a movie, like they would be like, all right, cut, that's a wrap on the day, and then it's like a whip pan pushing into somebody pouring a bunch of shots at the bar.
Oh, cool, yeah.
and it would be, and that was the best part, because like the sun would come. I think my most enduring like memory of this whole thing was just seeing the sun coming up when we would wrap at the Institute, and then everybody grabbing a shot of whiskey, and then walking, and then like seeing Spears and Gurner, the special effects guys, smoking a cigarette outside, and everybody would be, it was just great. It was great, and I think that helps so much from like if you make a movie here and everybody's kind of ready to get home, and everybody's like,
You have people stopping by, making plans for the night. It's like, you're not making any fucking plans because you don't have a car, and there's 2 feet of fucking snow on the ground, so.
Right.
yeah, and so you're really just in it, and it was a great experience.
Yeah. No, that's the way to make movies, man.
Yeah.
But
How'd the two of you meet? I mean, because I don't actually know the story. I mean, I know there's a Stuart Gordon connection, but I don't know if that's how you met. But how'd this all begin?
Well, I did Reanimator the musical with Stuart Gordon, and at the time, Joe was Stuart's like assistant, and he also was stage managing Reanimator the musical. So that's how we met, and we were both. Other folks in the show were had seen horror movies and were horror fans, but like I was really a big horror nerd, and I was super nerding out over working with Stuart Gordon, and Joe is also a super horror nerd. And so it was really funny because I would be like, Joe, have you ever seen a movie called They Live? And he would like sort of roll his eyes, and he'd hand me a DVD of Inside and go have fun, And so I credit Joe with a lot of my
Discoveries?
adult horror education.
That's
right.
funny.
But,
well, I want to talk a little bit about how you guys got in those positions, though, because so for Graham, you were living in New York at the time that Reanimator the musical became a thing.
yeah.
And then you auditioned for it, or you heard there was like how did that happen?
So, funny story. So when I was in New York, I was in a comedy troupe called Fucked, F-U-C-T. It was our comedy troupe, and
Okay.
and we and I did it for like 10 years, and we would travel the country and perform at Caroline's and stuff, and it was great. Well, George Wendt of all people, was like a fan of our show. And we had gotten introduced to him because he was in a Broadway show with a friend of ours, just one of those sort of random connections.
Norm from Cheers.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yes.
Just in case.
and so George just started coming to shows like on his own, and it was hilarious because we'd be going, George is here. How did this happen? And he was so awesome, and we started hanging out, and then eventually he like did a couple sketches with us, and it was great. So then fast forward to I'm on vacation in Vegas with my then girlfriend, now my wife, and we're in Vegas, and I get a phone call from George Wendt. And I answer it, and I go, George, what's going on? And actually, I'll break this news on the air right now. I was on the toilet when I received this call.
I always receive good news on shit.
And I got this call, and I'm like, George, I better answer. And I go,
Was it a FaceTime?
I wish.
Then it would have been awkward.
I wish. And he was like, hey, Graham, this is kind of random. Have you ever heard of a movie called Reanimator? I said, have I ever heard of a movie called Reanimator? He goes, yeah, Stuart Gordon, the work of Stuart Gordon. I go, yeah, he's one of my favorite filmmakers. He goes, well, he's directing this musical version of Reanimator. And I was thinking you'd be great to play Herbert West. So anyway, could I give him your number and have him call you? I go, yeah, please.
Wow.
And so I go to my wife and I say I gotta take an hour right now and I gotta, Stuart Gordon's gonna call me. She's going, who?
Were you wasted?
No, not yet. This isn't during the day, thankfully.
Literally,
Otherwise,
this moment of you on the shitter is like your defining moment up to this point in your life.
It really
is. All of this
that was my moment.
Since
that was my moment. Yeah.
That's marvelous.
Everything's come from that.
Yeah.
And so it was great. And Stuart called me and we had a great conversation and he asked if I could come to LA in 2 days and audition. He would send me the music and so I sent my wife back to New York on the plane and I just drove
I
here.
sent my wife back to New York.
Well, our vacation was going to be over. We were going to fly back, so I just trashed my ticket and I got a rental car and I drove to LA and I stayed with George and I auditioned. And, the rest is history.
You left your wife for a fat man. That's what I'm hearing. That's all I'm hearing.
But it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out.
It worked out great. And so that was, and that was how I became involved. And so then when we started doing, we did a reading first and then we, the show started happening. And it was when the show, really took off that my wife and I decided, well, why don't we just move to LA and see what happens?
Well, worth noting that you just finished recording the actual soundtrack release that's coming.
Yeah,
right?
Very, very excited. Very excited. Yeah, it's been many years in the making, but yeah, we just recorded the official cast soundtrack.
Did it take long to get back in the groove? Because it's been a couple of years, right?
Yeah, we did over, close to 250 performances of it, and so it's been a couple years now since we've done it, but it really, it just took one or two times of listening to it and going, oh, right, and the muscle memory kicks in. What was weird was having to do it not moving around.
Yeah.
Because
it's
a
physical performance.
Yeah,
Sure,
it was, that was what was weird, and they had me and Jesse, in opposite booths, looking at each other through panes of glasses, and it was strange.
Huh.
But it was great. It sounds awesome, and I'm really, really excited that.
Did it spark any interest to do some more live?
I don't know. I hope so.
Yeah.
I have
know
to ask
nothing.
you, as the neurotic New Yorker in me has to ask you the following, because I remember the last time I was at Reanimated Music, or just any play in general.
Uh-huh.
Now, you're an actor. That's a hard job. I understand how it works in movies and stuff, but, you just threw the number out, 250, that you did this. You've been on stage, how many days a week? I don't know, 4 or 5 or something like that?
Yeah, it depended on the
Depended?
run. This was, we did, several different, productions of it that would, some of them were Thursday through Sunday, with a couple of shows on a Sunday, and some of them, I think at one point, it was one show a day. Like in Edinburgh, it was, a month of one show a day, And,
How'd that go down
Once
in
a
Edinburgh?
day.
Oh, it was great.
They loved it.
It was great. It was we were at 10:30 at night. So we were the last show, and it was awesome. And then we would go to the bar afterwards and be up till 6. And Edinburgh was amazing.
I had to miss out on that.
Yeah. Joe was a big time movie director by
I had
that
to cut
point.
almost. It was fun. We got back from cutting Almost Human, and Graham's like, "I'm going to Ireland," and I'm like, "I'm gonna sit in my room because I'm broke and have a movie to cut."
Get this movie out.
But and it was. It's an exhausting show. And
Well, here's why I want to ask that, okay? Because, I've worked a lot of retail jobs and record stores and all that nonsense. And when I think of that, I try to compare my job to your job. because you're going on stage and performing for what, like 90 minutes, 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a very weak stomach myself. So all I could think of in your place is like, Jesus Christ, what if he's got a cold? What if he has to go to the bathroom? Like, how did they do this every night for 2 hours?
I'll tell you.
So, yes.
Well,
Explain
I'll
it
tell
to
you.
me. What happens when you show up and, like, your nose won't stop running because you've got a fucking flu? You still have to do the show,
funny
right?
you should ask about my nose. So at one point in the show when I'm assuming, oh yeah, Hollywood baby.
A little bit of that, huh?
Hollywood baby. No, when I'm assuming everyone that listens to this has probably seen Reanimator, and if you haven't, what are you doing?
Right, pause, go watch
Yeah,
Reanimator.
but
See if anything.
when I behead Dr. Hill on the stage, there's a blood gag where they shoot blood up into my face while I'm singing, and the blood goes all up into my mouth and also straight up my nose. And that particular blood, there's lots of different blood concoctions that are used in the show, and the stuff that gets on the audience is like, based in soap so it can wash out and stuff. Yeah. But the stuff that goes on me, has to be super, like, really, really red. So they use tomato juice as part of it. Well, tomato juice, as you know, is very acidic. So over the course of so many performances, it, particularly when we were doing it in New York, when it would go up my nose, it slowly eroded, like, the inside of my nose. It caused my nose to start bleeding.
Oh, wow.
And so that scene comes, like, kind of right before the big, like, ending climax of the show, and I have this big thing. So this was this, like, ongoing thing where my nose would start spontaneously bleeding during, like, my final number. And, you gotta figure it out. I started keeping tissues on me, and I would just, like, fucking stuff a tissue up my nose, or I would, I learned that Afrin will very quickly stop a nosebleed. Or it just bleeds because you're covered in blood anyway. And
it's nice to close that rumor because people were talking that it was Jeff Combs that bitch slapped you every time. Nosebleed, but now we know the truth.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Hey, he was there. He saw it one time.
He saw it once. He was very nice.
That was about the same time that they were doing Nevermore, his performance.
He was
his best performance.
He was amazing. He was very nice, and he said some really nice stuff to me. That was awesome. But then about, like, going to the bathroom and stuff, you figure it out.
Yeah.
You figure out the times when you have time.
'Cause I used to play in bands and stuff, and there's a certain level of adrenaline that kicks in once you're in the middle of performing that I guess you just don't even think about that shit.
Well, Ozzy just pisses himself on stage, and that's why he dumps the water on him, because he literally just pisses himself.
Really?
I swear to God.
Oh
wow.
Wow. But he's Ozzy. He can
cover Ozzy.
That's what Jesse Merlin does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you guys like, not like the generic, like, oh, Stuart's so good with XYZ, but like, what did you actually learn from working with Stuart over time? Is it an attention to, like, working with actors, or how he treats a script? I'm curious.
Well, before I actually want to know how Joe hooked up with Stuart, because I know I met you very briefly when you first moved to town, and that's the thing. It's like, you want to be a filmmaker, you come to LA, whatever. I don't know exactly how you even hooked up with Stuart. How do you get your first job out here?
So I lived in Rhode Island until I was about 20. Graham, can you grab me a beer? There was, a guy who lived in Rhode Island who did a documentary in the 70s that was nominated for an Oscar. And he made, like, this really low-budget feature in the 80s. And we knew each other, and I asked him for any advice because I was moving out to L.A. And he said, I know this guy who was a camera operator or the DP on my movie. Call him up. So I called him up, and he hooked me up with Dennis Maloney, who was Stuart's DP, and I went and had coffee with Dennis Maloney, and I'm like, I just want to get this out of the way. I love Stuart Gordon. Stuck is amazing, because he shot Edmund and Stuck.
Yeah.
And he goes, and this was like 4 days into moving here. I immediately got a job at ArcLight Cinemas, and then I remember I went to the interview at ArcLight Cinemas, got the job, and then I went and met Dennis Maloney, the DP of Stuart's movies, and he's like, you know Stuart, he's a really nice guy. You want to meet him? And I'm like, yeah. So he gave me his number, and I wrote down all these bullet points, and I was drafting, like, how I'm going to do the call, and he was expecting the call, so I called him up, and he was like, you want to come down to my office and talk? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I didn't have a car at the time. I rode my bike to Burbank, where his office was, before my shift at ArcLight, where I had to drive to Sherman Oaks on my bike. Went and met Stuart Gordon, and he's like, I'm looking for a new intern. Why don't you take these scripts and do some coverage on them? And I didn't know what the fuck coverage was, so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it tonight. So I went to my shift at ArcLight, and I'm sitting there on my phone looking at how to do script coverage. Nice. So I did it that night, and then gave him to the next day, and he's like, do you want to come work your ass off for me for free? I'm like, yeah, sure. So, like, I would just read scripts for him, and in return, he would read anything I wrote, and, like, we just developed that kind of going back and forth, and he allowed me to then put myself as the head of development for his company, because I was reading all these scripts. And then he did Nevermore with Jeff Combs, and he's like, start helping me out with Nevermore. We're going to go to Jeff Combs' house and rehearse. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, like, I'm sitting there watching Stuart direct Jeff, like, 4 months after I moved here. And I'm, like, fucking getting tingling in my goddamn toes.
Totally.
So I'm watching this happen, and then he eventually hires me as a stage manager at Nevermore, which then went into Reanimator, and I just kept on working my ass off. Like, I was working full-time at ArcLight, and then doing anything Stuart needed. I would go to his fucking office and do whatever he needed every day. And, just the fact that he was able to read stuff that I wrote and, like, talk about it, like, as if I was a peer was, like, very inspiring and gave me a lot of confidence as well. And then he also, like, he'd be like, oh, I'm going out to lunch today with John Davison. And I'm like, John Davison, the producer of RoboCop and Social Groups. Yeah, you want to come? So I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. So, like, then I would just go to lunch with, like, and then one day he's like, hey, you want to come to the office today and do some coverage? Oh, I got lunch with Joe Dante. You want to come? I'm like,
yes.
I wish I had prepared, but yes.
Yeah.
So, like, and Stuart's just, like, the fucking best guy in the world. And, like, then when I was going to go do Almost Human, he was just so supportive and, like, would read every single draft of the script. And, like, every single week on my day off, I'd call him and he'd be like, oh, and any sort of problem I was having, I'm like, oh, this is driving me crazy. And he'd just help me talk me through it. And, like, he's like.
It's a real mentorship.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's the godfather.
Yeah.
He gave you a great note for Almost Human that I remember now. The whole thing with the chainsaw, where he, like, and that's a great moment both in the trailer and in the movie.
Yeah,
now,
it's like the iconic shot is Josh with the chainsaw, and originally he was never supposed to pick it up because I was like, oh, I can't do an effect with the chainsaw, so Josh just rips the axe up and, charges after they go through the house, and he's like, well, why doesn't Josh pick up the chainsaw? I'm like, because I can't afford to do the effect. He's like, yeah, but then you can have Josh running around with a chainsaw, so I did it. And it looks awesome. And then, like, the still from the movie is Josh with a chainsaw. Everywhere you look is Josh with a chainsaw.
Wasn't it something, didn't he say something like, you can't have a chainsaw laying there and not have somebody pick it up?
And I was like, God, I feel like such an idiot.
Yeah. This is the master of horror we're talking about here. Of course, you gotta listen to him. That's pretty amazing.
He hasn't
very
made
inspiring.
a film in the period that you guys have been working. He hasn't shot a film.
No, he had literally, like, the first week I was working for him, Stuck came out. And I remember I was so excited because right when I started working for him, he was teaching a class at LA Film School where he would take a Twilight Zone episode, a script for an original Twilight Zone episode, and he would cast it with his friends, and then they would take a class of 20 people at LA Film School, and, like, the people at LA Film School would be the DP, the camera operator, the gaffers, the UPM, and everybody there was not taking it seriously. And I was sitting there as his assistant watching, and, like, they're just, like, joking around and fucking around and giving him attitude. I'm like, you guys are literally sitting here able to do and Tom Towles was, like, in the fucking episode, and I'm like, you guys are fucking, and, like, the camera operator, I remember he had, like, I'm tattooed, so, but I just remember, like, he looked like a fucking punk, and he just had tattoos all over his face, and, like, he was just giving lip to Stuart, and I just wanted to, I was so fucking angry. I'm getting angry now.
Like, they had no idea.
And I'm like, you guys are paying $100,000 to learn how to direct by Stuart Gordon.
Well,
but he didn't care. He just directed the fuck out of it anyway.
None of them have made a movie, and you've made two, so fuck those guys. But, wow.
So I mean, well, it sounds like the mentorship and the confidence he gave you, but what, like, not even like him trying to help you, but from watching him and, like, working with him as a director, because he's obviously an actor's director. I mean, that's 100%. Clear from his background. Like, he comes from theater, and he had kind of an experimental Chicago theater group, right, where there's a lot of nudity in some of their productions, and just really kind of out there stuff before he made Reanimator. But I'm curious, because I've always viewed him, when I look at all the directors that I grew up on, I always viewed him and probably Craven as the two most intelligent. Like, of all the people I could imagine, if you were talking to someone who's like an intellectual, Stuart Gordon seems like a really fucking smart guy to me.
He's super smart, and he's, I mean, I think the one, if you ask, what's the main thing about Stuart, it's that he, like you said, he's an actor's director. He takes a lot of time with character. Mm-hmm. It's never, like, him directing Meg in Reanimator. There's never a sense of, you're here to scream. No, you are the moral center of this movie. With me as Herbert, why is he so peculiar? Find that as your motivation, not, like, what do you think? Did he kill the cat?
That's fun. Did he find different motivations, as far as for your stage performance versus what he would have given for the film version of it? Or do you think he was looking for something different?
I don't know. I mean, when I first sat down with him, the one thing that I told him was, I said, I don't want to do a copy of Jeff Combs.
Yeah.
I said, I'm a really big fan of this movie, and I think Jeffrey Combs' performance in this movie is one of the all-time great, like movie monsters, maybe the best mad scientist in history, right? And so I'm like, I can't, there's no way that I can just do a copy of that, because it'll never be as good, and, I want to do my own thing. And he was, like, totally on board with that. And so, I sort of, the way I approached it, and that Stuart seemed to really, endorse this way of going about it was that I would, I didn't watch the movie, until the very end of the process. And, we just said, okay, we're going to approach this like any regular
organic piece.
Yeah,
like build it up from the ground.
just do it like any play. And I think that helped both of us to, we didn't think about the movie. It was about, what are the motivations behind the characters. And then at the end, there were a few moments that we gotta hit this moment. And so then, of course, we went back and watched the film.
I loved, I saw, I guess, one of the early productions, and what I loved, and I've told this before on Killer PV, but one of the things I loved is when it kind of ended, or it's halftime, and Stuart just walks out on stage and goes, all right, what didn't work? What worked? And it's not like none of this bullshit, like, hey, just say nice things to me so we can move on. It's like, no, I actually have a pragmatic view of making a best production I fucking can.
Yeah.
Tell me if that gag didn't work. And I remember putting my hand up and going, oh, the fridge is too low. I couldn't see the gag. And that's a very simple note, and you can do something about it. Great. So if somebody speaks up, now the gag's fucking amazing the next take. And I really appreciated that about him. Yeah.
For him to do that, because I've met some of the other master horror guys that really don't want to hear it.
They want to just sit on their memories.
The fact that he would come out and be like, what didn't work? What come up and let us know what you thought was good and not good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, and as far as like being a collaborative, director, he was 100% open to talking about everything, and I think that comes from him working in the Organic Theater Company in Chicago, back in the 70s, because that was totally a theater company of just a bunch of people working together, but then what makes him a great director is he listens to everyone. He really listens to everyone, and then he'll tell you yes or no.
Yeah.
And then if he says, no, I think you should do it this way, then you generally know, yep, Stuart's right.
Yeah.
And that's it,
My favorites, I want to go around the room and find out everyone's favorite Stuart Gordon thing, whether it's a movie or whatever. But
sure.
The one I want to bring up is when they did the special editions of Friday the 13th, 4, 5, and 6. There's this, maybe you guys don't know about this. There's this epic documentary. It's almost done like one of those these cold case like specials, and that takes the Jason legend seriously.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And Stuart plays Shelley's dad.
Oh.
And he's so fucking good, because they bring up and he's like, oh, Shelley's just he's a practical joker, and he's just so funny, and he's my whole world, and this and that. And then they cut to footage of like Shelley, the killer Jason being taken away. And he's like, what? That's the hockey mask I bought him for his hockey team. What, this is the guy that did it? And it's just like the fact, like Stuart's a really funny guy, and he's actually like a really good actor when he does little like goofy gags like that. So I strongly recommend checking out the special features of the Friday the 13th just to see Stuart as Shelley's dad. But what's your favorite thing he's done? One of the I lent him King of the Ants not too long ago, and
I think that was the last one I hadn't seen.
Right.
No, I haven't seen the ice cream.
Starring George Wendt and Chris McKenna, who were both in the
Chris
original.
McKenna.
Yeah,
and
I mean, it's I love Elric brought up a great point that there's an interesting trilogy in Stuart's filmography of That, Stuck, and Edmund. Like it's
like kind of thrillers almost. And when you guys were talking about how good of a actor's director he was, I couldn't help but think about King of the Ants, and I always mix up the fucking Baldwins, but the Baldwin that's in King of the Ants has a monologue in a car where he's drinking whiskey. I have never seen, it's either Daniel or Steven, I have never seen...
Hold on, Joe, it's the vampires, Baldwin. Just to
Daniel,
tie it back to our old...
Okay,
it's that
perfect. I love vampires, he's not good in vampires.
Yeah.
But,
he's actually, I agree, he's the worst character in Vampire.
There's just this monologue where it's zooming into him, and he's in the car drinking whiskey, and I'm like, this is a amazing monologue, and like the only thing you can speak to is the writing and the directing. Like,
yeah. Well, the thing I said to Rob right after, which is I always think is a cool credit to a director, is I watched it and I was like, this is some guy's first movie. This has all the energy, the performance, and the aesthetic of a guy's first movie. And the only other time I felt that way was Sidney Lumet, and it was like the second to last or last film before The Devil Knows You're Dead or whatever it is, and that felt like a first fucking movie. The energy in it was shot digitally, and you're like, well, Jesus Christ, and this dude's 78.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, of the Masters guys, I've always said, like, of those guys that have the Masters of Horror tag, it's Stuart Gordon and Don Coscarelli are the two that I still get excited about. Because you look at John Dies at the end, you could have told me that was a 23-year-old debut.
And he did it for like $300,000 or $400,000 or something.
And it's amazing, So those two, I've always held them in such high regard.
I can't remember if it was like the commentary or a documentary, but Stuart was talking about King of the Ants and the sex scene, and he's like, yeah, nobody does doggy style in movies anymore, and there's a lot of blowback against doggy style, but I think it's important. You got a point. You got a point there, Stuart.
Variation.
So now whenever I watch it and I see that, I'm like, oh, what? There's the doggy style.
You thought Stuart was thinking about it, which I love.
What I love about Stuart, I mean, I don't know what my favorite is. I think if you had to, like, if you put a gun to my head and said, what's the best Stuart Gordon movie? I think From Beyond is probably
I agree.
the best Stuart Gordon movie. However, I finally last year I went on a mission to watch all the rest of the Stuart Gordon movies.
Pin the Pendulum.
It's amazing.
It's really
Great movie.
It's amazing. And the only one I haven't seen is the TV movie he did with Anthony Perkins.
Daughters of Darkness.
Yeah,
with Mia Saro and Anthony Perkins.
I still haven't been able to see that one. But I'll tell you, there's not a single Stuart Gordon movie that is not super fun to watch, that I would not immediately watch again, that I would not recommend to anybody, that is not pushing a boundary in some way.
Yeah, Edmund was when I saw that, I was like, oh, it's gonna. It kind of blew me away how edgy it was.
Oh,
and
yeah.
how kind of full on and beautifully shot it was.
I mean, it's amazing to me, Space Truckers
Yeah.
is crazy. It's totally bonkers, but it's completely fun. It's well acted. Charles Dance, for all of you Game of Thrones fans, has an animatronic
Dennis
penis.
Hopper in that?
No,
Stephen Dorff's in it, right?
Space Truckers is Dennis Hopper and Steve.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's like
I thought
a
it was
whole
Dorff
bunch of
and
people,
Hopper.
and George Wendt,
It's been a long
and
time.
it's a
What's
ton
the
of people.
girl? Debbie Mazar or something like that?
No, yeah, Debbie Mazar.
Yeah.
And but the one that blew me away that I'd never even heard about was Fortress.
I was just on my head was Christopher Lambert.
That was supposed to be
Jeff Combs?
Schwarzenegger.
Oh.
Schwarzenegger was supposed to play Lambert's role, and then Schwarzenegger dropped out. And I can't remember if they had another director or if they didn't have a director, but when Schwarzenegger dropped out, he actually recommended Stewart for the role.
Oh,
For
weird.
the role of director, because Schwarzenegger's body double from Terminator is the guy in Reanimator, the corpse that comes back to life.
Oh,
so then Schwarzenegger went and watched Reanimator right after they did it, and they also shot in some of the same sets as Terminator. Schwarzenegger went and watched Reanimator and became friends with Stewart. And they were supposed to make this awesome movie together called Steroid, where there's a script. And I was working for Stewart when the whole Chris Benoit thing happened. And I was like, holy shit, this is so shocking. Did you hear about this? He goes, yeah, I was supposed to do a story like that in the 80s with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, here. And he flips through his fucking filing cabinet and pulls out a script called Steroid. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? He's like, yeah, Schwarzenegger plays a wrestler who's addicted to steroids, and he ends up going crazy and goes on a murder spree through New York City. And I'm like, holy
What period?
shit.
Well, because this is an article for Blumhouse.com in 2 days.
Yeah, I mean,
because
it just
that's
blew my
without
mind.
a doubt.
That's amazing.
That's really crazy.
But it was 87, and then he did,
Can you imagine a 1980?
there's actually the concept
I probably
art-
would have ended Schwarzenegger's career because he was on the high.
The
concept
maniac
art
of
is
Stuart
a
Gordon's
wrestler
career.
like this that looks like Schwarzenegger, and he's holding an amputated arm like this, and there's just blood dripping all over, and it says Steroid.
But you weren't hard during the James Woods part of this. You are now raging hard. That's pretty wild.
Did he ever talk to you about his, because I've read little bits and pieces. Did he ever talk to you about his American Psycho?
Very briefly, he didn't seem very happy about the way that turned
Really?
out.
Oh, man.
Because it was supposed to be Johnny Depp, I think.
He
He
wa-
was going to direct it, and Johnny Depp was signed on. To
Johnny
play.
Depp was going to shoot in black and white, from what I understand,
Oh, wow.
and
Yeah,
do a
that's
really
interesting.
fucking vile movie, from what I understand.
But then they wanted to avoid the whole misogynist angle, so they hired
I think
Harron.
about that. I'm like, did you read the book?
Yeah,
Because
so,
that
so
is
they
the
hired,
angle.
They hired Mary Harron to direct it, and it's
But even then, she still made a film about misogyny. It's-
you can't not
No, that's
make
the
that
topic.
story.
It's the fucking topic. It's ludicrous. Yeah. That's pretty funny. So for you, watching Stuart, was there anything else that you kind of picked up besides being, directing?
Well, I watched it. The thing about watching him was I didn't have a lot of experience directing actors because I'd never worked with real actors before. So seeing him direct an ensemble and how to have people play off of each other and things he would tell certain people, and then because I could see, I knew if he told. He would tell Graham something, and then he would tell somebody else something, and tell somebody else something, and nobody knew what he was telling them. And just seeing how he had personalities play off of each other, and how he was able to wrangle that was probably the most important lesson to me because I had zero experience in ever dealing with that.
Yeah, rather than the stereotype of a director yelling out his direction to everyone to see,
Yeah.
you're actually creating little
Well,
mini
that's the thing
conflicts.
is he would do both. He would
Yeah.
direct everybody in a note session afterwards where it's like, all right, you all do this. So he would play both sides, and then once he started to learn the personalities of each individual actor, he would say certain things in a public forum and then say certain things in a private forum, and then have me say certain things to people, which I think may have been a directorial tactic. I don't know. It was
Probably,
interesting
yeah.
to
That's
learn how to
interesting,
do all that, and I think that that was because he's such a phenomenal director with actors. I was so because everybody's different, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting too to like when Joe talks about, he would tell people certain things. I mean, ultimately what that does is it surprises somebody else and has them naturally react to what you've just done.
Yeah.
They, and then you keep that, you say, yeah, that's great, do that. But you're never going to be able to react honestly unless you're really reacting honestly. So it was that sort of thing, and I mean, that's why he's just so smart, he knows when to do that and how to, it's like one thing to say, Graham, you need to be more contained versus Graham, Herbert is totally sure of himself. He just needs to walk into the room. Mm-hmm. Just walk into the room. And like, that sort of stuff is what, as an actor, what resonates with me because I'm not thinking, all right, how do I be more contained here? It's, my objective is walk into the room.
So playable actions versus
that's
concepts.
I love this. Like, I'm so fascinated by this. Like, Joe, when you direct the actors in your movies, do you think about like their backstories, their lives before the movie starts? Do they come to you about like what they think happened beforehand? Or
I think it's kind of a give and take, like with both. That's usually discussed kind of beforehand. Mm-hmm. I trust my actors implicitly, but I also have like very specific things that I want them to do. I give Graham very specific direction before we start shooting, and then kind of see where he goes from that, and just kind of shape it from there because. I want to see, I want to work with that actor and see where their performance brings it and kind of let it grow organically from there. And then direct their interpretation of how they see the character as opposed to come in at the ground and just build it. I feel like it's all on the page. Let them play it how they play it on the page, and then I'll sculpt it from there. You know what I mean? Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm most fascinated by that, and maybe Graham can talk a little bit about that from your previous
you should talk about how I direct actors.
No, because the one story I'm thinking about, because this seems like what Stuart does, like, because he seems like an actor's director. And, one of the greatest stories I heard about Anthony Perkins, from the Psycho documentary I did was that he's an actor. He directed an actress, Lee Garlington, who plays like, she works at the diner in Psycho 2 and 3. And there's a scene where she's getting interviewed by, the news reporter that's trying to like kind of get the dirt on Norman. And his advice to her, like his direction was, okay, there's a guy that's been eating here for 5 years at this table over here. And he just asked you on a date. And tonight, you're gonna go out with this guy that you both kind of had a crush on. But, this person wants to interview you beforehand. So, play with that. And I kind of like the idea of an actor building this like, this side life. Like this is what's happening in this character's life outside of what we're seeing in the story. So is that the sort of thing that you think about as an actor or that directors give you?
Oh, sure. I mean, so like with The Mind's Eye, Joe and I obviously talked a lot about it and
I think you read every draft of the script, I believe.
I think I did, yeah.
Right? It was like 6 or 7.
Including the one with the Stegosaurus in it, the fire-breathing Stegosaurus. That was a really awesome draft. But budget, what are you gonna do? No, we, so like, I think a great example of this is, Joe and I talked a lot about, okay, this is the character and this is sort of, what his situation is. Go with that. And I contacted Lauren Ashley Carter, and we, once she was involved, and she and I hopped on the phone a few times, and like, we're able to talk about, just how we felt about that.
Right.
And then, and what our relationship was, and what our history was, and what we felt about all that. And, then we took it to Joe, and we said, hey, this is how we feel. And there was some stuff where we said, a lot of the stuff, he was like, yeah, that's great. But then, we're like, oh, we think our powers might do this. And he goes, no, it's not so much that, it's this. And it's that sort of just kind of pinpointing.
Whoops.
Oh, look out. It's
we're having a good time here.
There's beers a-flying, everybody. But it's that sort of pinpointing that I think, works really well with, as an actor with a director. Whereas, then vice versa, like working with John Sparadakis, who we haven't talked about yet. He plays Dr. Slovak. He's the villain in The Mind's Eye.
There's not much scenery left in the movie because he chewed it all up and spit it the fuck out.
He is amazing.
He's fun.
He
awesome.
owns it. He's, and if you haven't seen him in Larry Fessenden's Wendigo, you gotta see
him.
He's in Wendigo.
He's the bad guy with the handlebar. That's why I cast him.
Yeah.
I love Wendigo.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
He's
amazing. But anyway, then like, so I didn't meet him till our first day on set working together. And I sat down with him, and he's like a Broadway veteran, and like he's done a ton of stuff and a ton of movies. And, I said, hey, do you want to run through some of our scenes for later on? And he goes, well, I sort of think that either you rehearse the hell out of it and you do it a lot and you get it as tight as you can, or you just, with a movie, you don't rehearse it at all and you just see what fucking comes up in the moment. And he said, we don't have time to rehearse the hell out of it right now, so let's just see what fucking comes up in the moment. And then that was another, and so then that was a matter of like, each of us individually going to Joe and go, how do we feel about this person? Hey, this is what I think. This is what my character's knowledge is of this person going into this movie.
Mm-hmm, right.
And then, that worked so great as antagonists to each other, of being able to then, use that and sort of have like information about the other that the other didn't know and let that play off each other. And I think that's where you get that electric, sort of life between characters on screen.
Yeah, I remember reading a great quote about directing actors. Do you remember the guy, The Lady Killers? Not the Coen Brothers film. Alexander McKendry, he did all the Alec Guinness kind of movies. And I guess he taught at USC, but I came across in a book and it just said every character needs to have a back to the head and money in their pocket. And what he meant is like they should be thinking about something that has nothing to do with your fucking movie. There's something on their mind. They're divorced, fucking something. And they have like $12.50 in their pocket.
Yeah.
And the thing costs $30. They know how much money's in their pocket. If you can ground it with those two things, you've got a character. And I always, it stuck with me. Like, what a great way to flesh out a person.
Totally. Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I had a teacher in college that said, every choice as an actor that you make is you are either fighting or you're fucking. and which one
I'd add
one
fisting,
is it?
but
Yeah, which one is it? And I mean, obviously, that's not all there is to it, but I think it's like knowing where were you a few minutes ago? Yeah. Where are you going right now? What are you doing in this scene right this moment?
Often I think that's when I see like some of these straight to video horror that, is 90% of what we wade through, right, to find good stuff. But I feel like a lot of it feels like that when it comes from the performances that feel like the person has started becoming the character when the director said action. And there's no through line, and there's nothing.
Well, with Spiridakos, it's funny because I'd be on a shot of Graham where Spiridakos, I'm shooting Graham this way and Spiridakos is over here just to have Graham play off of him, off camera. And I haven't even called action yet, and Spiridakos has got the drool coming out of his mouth. He's going, you motherfucker, Connors, I'm gonna fucking kill you. And I'm sitting there laughing before I can, like, I have to control my laughter because it's so awesome before I call action. I'm like, John, you're literally taking me out of directing because you're so awesome. Like,
and that's why I love watching those behind the scenes on The Shining. It's not like, some people, he's criticized Jack, but it's like such a fucking great performance because he's always there. It's not like he builds and goes, he's just always, and behind the scenes, he's fucking going there before each take.
Yeah, there's like that shot of him pacing back and forth before the axe thing and
Shelley Duvall's an angel. She gets us out of the way in that movie.
She is an angel.
But listening to you talk about how to direct actors, I remember this very specific story that came up when he was describing it. Right before we shot, I go, all right, Graham, until the opening sequence, you're John Rambo. And he goes, what the fuck are you talking about? And I go, you're John Rambo. And he goes, I don't understand what you mean. And I'm like, the drifter and all this. And it turns out, he had never seen First Blood.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Elric has left the building.
Elric has left.
No, okay, Elric, come back.
He's out the door.
Wow, he's literally just left the apartment,
walked out of the door.
All right, get back here. Come on, stop
hey,
a scene.
I remedied it. Immediately.
But I just want to point out, Graham was not the
Rob. Do some vetting of these fucking.
Oh my god!
Graham was not the only member of the cast and crew to not have seen First Blood.
Fucking Noah Sagan.
I will get to that. So I say, you're John Rambo. So I'm like, rent First Blood. You have to watch First Blood. So he watched it before. I'm backing around. He's out here, and he goes, oh my god, I know exactly what you mean now. It's amazing. So then we're all out after.
It became like instantly in my top 10 movies of all time. It was unbelievable. I watched it 5 times that weekend.
I've never seen Elric that upset.
Wait, and for our listeners, I've got a good connection to you all thing.
He literally left the apartment.
Ted Kotcheff directed it, and he also directed an Australian film.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Weekend at
with
Bernie's.
A little quote that I like to say, "You're mad, you bastard," because I know people love that.
Well, anyway, 2 weeks into production, we're all out on our day off. We're fucking eating wings at this. There's this place that has the best wings of all time. The wings. So we're all sitting there, wasted, and we start talking about First Blood. And John Spiridakos goes, "I saw First Blood 3 times at the drive-in. It's amazing." And he starts talking about Solon, but he hasn't seen it since. And Jeremy Gardner goes, "What the fuck are you guys smoking? First Blood is not good." And I'm like, "You're thinking of Rambo." It was the same thing where he was thinking of Rambo too. He's like,
"That's what I thought I'd seen. I had only ever seen Rambo 2."
So that night, we're at this mansion, we find a plasma up in the master
that's
bedroom,
so
we
cool.
bring it down to the main room, we hook a laptop up to it, we pull all this stuff so we set up this impromptu screening on our net.
We get a bottle of Johnny Walker Black.
Nice.
And we
pop
all
it
watch
open.
First Blood, and everybody's minds fucking melted.
Because of one word, Dennehy. Everyone thinks it's Rambo, but it's fucking Dennehy.
Fucking Dennehy.
He's
It's
magic in that
everything about that movie. And Spiridakis the whole time, like, did he work with Dennehy on something?
Yeah.
Love
And he was
Dennehy.
like telling Dennehy stories, and we were just watching the movie, and
Yeah, I think it's the ultimate outsider movie. It might be the greatest movie about an outsider.
It's
Who you root
crawled
for, you
up
know?
my, like, when I was a kid, I was like, oh, I love Rambo,
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
Rambo Part 2, but now I'm like, First Blood's like legitimately
It's a real,
master
well, it's also a real
class
movie
filmmaking.
versus like an action film
Yeah.
and a sequel. Like it really is a real.
it's absolutely Stallone's best performance.
Yeah.
Like that opening
absolutely.
shot where he comes in and he's looking for his friend and he learns that they died. And
Yeah.
he's like, and then he's just walking down the road like lost and the cop stops him. It's just like, God, and then the mountains and the fucking
And it's
anamorphic cinematography.
equally
oh my God, I'm gonna
topical to
tear
right
up.
now. Like the way people are coming back as vets
yeah,
and like
yeah.
suffering from
Yeah.
PTSD. It's like no one gives a shit. No one's even making movies about those guys.
Yeah.
At least we got a Rambo. You know what I mean?
Well,
From
Rambo was
Vietnam.
also like 13 years.
Yeah,
so
after, yeah,
maybe
you're
like
right.
2025.
Maybe there'll
we'll
be
get
a-
it for-
And he punches David Caruso in the face.
I know. Oh yeah, that's right.
Well, also,
and
when he
naked
jumps up
shower
and
scene.
he swings and he does the drop kick and then the
Yeah.
foot sweep. I'm like, who does a foot
If
sweep
this
in a
show
movie?
doesn't spark anything except you rewatching First Blood,
If anyone listening has never seen First
Oh,
Oh,
Blood,
man.
it's a fucking
you need to
mess.
stop.
Elric will walk out of the apartment.
But that said, I heard there was some slight derogatory terms towards Part 2, and that also has one of the greatest moments there. I'm coming to get you.
I love part
Which
2.
I love.
Dude, it opens with Stallone jackhammering in prison,
Yeah,
and then
man.
it cuts to written by James Cameron and
I
Sylvester
love
Stallone.
to.
Well, and
I think
that's
two's
and so
fantastic.
that's how you can imagine my confusion when Joe says you're Rambo. I'm going, I'm Rambo?
like that
really?
Rambo? No. First Blood.
I
Rambo.
really love that
Got
he's
it.
giving you a direction that you haven't even got the context of, and you're just like, okay, I'll play
I
that.
go, well, I'm going, God, I
You
gotta
went and saw the
get like
movie.
jacked up and like, you know.
Steroids are on their way.
That's
You know,
actually pretty
I
glorious.
really love that fourth Rambo. The one.
it's a-
that-
oh, yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
He cuts
great.
bodies in half with a 50 cal.
Weren't they about to do a monster
Amazing.
one? No, weren't they going to do like a Predator thing
They were
after
gonna
that?
do the Rambo 5.
Rambo
I
vs.
really hope they
Predator,
had
best film ever not made.
Yeah.
No,
Who
I
wouldn't
hope
watch
they ended
that?
it because you know what I saw that Rambo, the fourth one, on 42nd Street. Although 42nd Street is not what it is back from
Yeah,
the
yeah.
day.
It's still
I-
42nd
I
Street.
saw it on 42nd Street opening night, and I mean, I'm telling you, that last 20 minutes was like a fucking rock concert.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
everyone was standing up at the fucking carnage that
Dude,
got unleashed.
I was like 18 or 19, so I was at my peak, like, and I just remember there was a clip of this, this guy raping this girl, and then Rambo comes in, grabs him by the hair, and just rips his throat off his
out,
bare head.
yeah.
And I literally threw my laptop down, and I was like screaming. I was like, oh my God!
I'm not. This isn't even joke and hyperbole. I think Sylvester Stallone's one of the greatest, like, misunderstood artists. Like, I
Oh my
remember,
God.
okay, as a kid, I always thought he was just a grunt. I'd seen all these movies, but I loved them. I saw him on the Oprah Winfrey Show when she was like, early peak, mid-'80s, and it was a Tango and Cash thing. And Kurt Russell,
Love that
I love
movie.
that film too. Kurt Russell and Stallone are on it, and I'm expecting from watching their careers that Kurt Russell's the smart guy and Stallone's the dumb guy.
Well.
And then they start talking. No, but they start talking. My mind, by the end of that episode, I would lecture my friends. I go, "Did you know Sylvester Stallone's one of the smartest guys I've ever heard
Oh my
talk?"
God.
I
He
mean,
really is.
like, seriously, he is so smart and educated. And Kurt Russell, he's like just high as a kite.
Well, Stallone's this interesting dynamic where, like, with Rocky, he was so low down, he's like, I need to fight, and he makes it, and then he gets his ego. It's like a 3-movie cycle where
Yeah.
it's his comeback movie, and then he's like, all right, I'm gonna make good on it, and then here's my crowning achievement. Then his ego gets blown out of proportion, makes 3 shitty movies, and he's down to the dumper, and then he comes back. So it's like he made Rocky and then Rambo. So he had 2 good movies. I don't really like the Expendables, but it's like, so I wasn't really expecting Rambo to be that good. And I love, like, I am the biggest Stallone apologist in the world. Like, my ultimate dream is to make a kick-ass action movie with Stallone or Schwarzenegger. I hope I do it soon because I'll have to turn 70. But I mean, Jim Mickel's doing a movie with Stallone, and it's like, I feel
Really?
like-
What is it?
Get
oh,
the
they
fuck
announced like
outta
a week
here.
ago. So the movie is described as Stallone is a washed-up alcoholic detective with more regrets than memories.
With fucking Mickle?
And it's
Get
written and
outta
directed by
here.
Jim
What?
Mickle.
Holy
It's
Yeah.
ca- I like to call
That's
it
like the greatest news I've heard.
Copland
all week.
2.
Oh my
A little bit of steak
The end
land.
of Copland, where his eardrums
Copland's
blow,
amazing.
and it
He's
goes into
amazing in it.
108 frames a second. He's cocking the shotgun with blood coming down his ears. Oh, God.
You know what? My one, no,
Sorry,
no.
I fucking love Stallone.
My number
Like,
one Stallone guilty pleasure, not guilty pleasure, just
not
great
guilty.
movie. Fucking Lock Up. He is
John, that's the director of Rolling Thunder
he
and
is
Brain Scan.
so freaking good in that movie, and it is a good movie. And I don't,
Demolition Man for me is
that's a fun one.
like,
yeah.
It's fun.
oh God,
Yeah.
that's the
There's big
I
things
know
like
how
that.
the 3 seashells work.
Oh yeah,
Do you
know,
really?
Yeah.
I
do.
sort
I actually
of
saw
know
him
a
using
theory,
one
Figured
of
it
those.
out. There's scraping involved.
Yeah, yeah. weird cupping of the balls part. I don't feel comfortable, but yeah, whatever.
I feel
Go with
very
what you got.
comfortable
Cup
with
the
that.
balls
Cup
and
the
stroke
balls.
the shaft.
But I love that we got to work in some John Rambo tonight. That
Oh
makes
my-
me good.
I
So
must,
what did Gardner say after you guys rewatched it?
He was like, all right, it's pretty, it's good.
Yeah.
That was it?
Yeah, Gardner. It's a fucking
Wasn't that the
masterpiece,
night,
all
though?
right?
Well, but that night, at the end of that night, I think it was you, maybe, I don't know if you were there, at least Jeremy and Josh walked like 3 miles to the end of the point.
No, we all walked, and then like Josh was like, oh, look, I'm looking at my map. The beach is a half a mile away. So we're walking for like an hour through thick fog. It's like 20 degrees out. And Josh's like, oh, it's just a half a mile down. And we're like, we're going back. So we take an hour to get back. And they just disappear. And then finally they're like, yeah, it was pretty cool. There was like some cliffs and
Well,
stuff.
they walked, to like the beach.
We were all wasted, like walking through this desolate town.
Well, they walked.
We shot in an island first. If we shot in an island called Jamestown, it's all rich people. So, and there's no businesses. So this island it's like 3 roads. It was all shut down. We're all staying at this mansion, and we're just walking down this road. Fucking a bunch of people who look like lunatics in the middle of fog, like walking in the middle. So that's a setup.
Well, and then imagine that then Josh and Jeremy, after everybody else goes back, they go all the way to the beach, and then they like find a knife at the beach, and they're like fascinated by this knife. And then I think it was Jeremy that said to Josh, man, what if I just picked up this knife and stabbed you with it right now? And I really wish that movie had been made, because I would really watch that movie. About Jamestown though, and shooting in that place, do you remember when we were in the middle of a shot and the 2 neighbors walked into the house?
Oh yeah, because they thought they were having a party. Because they saw all the cars, right?
Yeah, all the cars and all the lights. There were all the lights
In the
set
middle
up
of your
outside
shoot,
in the
though.
middle of the night. And so they just like open up, they're like, hey, where's the party? In the middle of the shoot, we're like, what are you doing right now? Oh.
So we were at this rich town in Jamestown. So you have to cross a bridge, pay like $14 to get to this island, and we're shooting in this mansion.
That's why we never left once we were there,
Yeah,
because you had to be told.
And there was all these shots that I had to get of Sparadakos in full makeup, driving the car, speeding away before it flips. And it was the very last day, and the sun was coming up. We're like, guys, we got to get these shots. So it's like 6:30 in the morning. The sun's just starting to come up. We rig a giant light on the hood of Josh's car, which isn't even the car from the movie. I'm in the passenger seat, leaning out the window with the camera, and the effects guys are laying in the back seat, and the sound guy. So the effects guy's laying on top of the sound guy in the back seat. The sound guy's getting the thing, and the effects guy's pumping the bladders. And John Sparadakos gets so much into character that he's speeding down the road. It turns out afterwards that Josh's car was unregistered and uninsured because his insurance and registration lapsed while we were shooting because we were so broke. So we're driving around this unregistered car with a light strap to it, and I'm just looking through the camera lens at Sparadakos, and he's going, "Oh, you motherfuckers!" And he starts swerving around and speeding, and I hear the effects guy go, "Oh shit!" And I look, and he's passing a school bus. So I'm like, this school bus full of kids is watching this guy with blood coming out of his face, screaming, going 60 miles an hour with a light blaring into his eyes, and some maniac leaning out of the car with a gigantic camera.
Wow.
And then I'm like, all right, John, let's turn around because I got to get the trees against the sun. So he pulls in front of the bus and pulls a 180 and then speeds past the bus. And I'm just like, oh my God. And then we get out of the car and he goes, hey, I didn't tell you that I lost my license, did I? What the fuck are you talking about, man?
I think 20 years from now, there's going to be some kid who's like, I decided to start making films because I saw
that?
I
That's
saw
the
this
crazy
guy
guy?
bleeding and I thought he was dying. He looked
Yeah.
insane, and I saw this guy at the camera and I was like, fuck, I want to do that.
Wait, I just imagine
Mommy?
the kid looking out the window and there's a car like going the same speed as the
Yeah,
bus
yeah.
and some crazy guy.
Oh,
It's
that's
like,
awesome.
That's
I think
amazing.
that's a perfect
Yeah,
moment
yeah.
right there.
I can't wait to watch this movie again.
Yeah,
It's
it's
been
pretty
so
cool.
long.
It's been a while. It has been a while though, right?
And
So-
what's the release plan for it? So it's coming out on VOD.
Hey, so August
On
5th,
August
we come
5th.
out in theaters and VOD. For those people in LA, we're opening up the Lamley, Pasadena,
Okay.
which is cool because it's a real movie theater.
Uh-huh.
Man.
I'm really happy about that, even though it's in Pasadena. And then in
love
New
Pasadena.
York, we'll be in the Village East 7. And then I don't know where else. We're in like 10 other cities, but we're gonna come out in VOD at the same time. And RLJ is our distributor. They've been really awesome so far. They've given us a killer poster, I think, and we're gonna be in fucking Comic-Con tomorrow in Hall H, which for those of you hearing this, it'll be after that, but
Yeah.
right now it's about 12 hours before. And
I
I'm
think
Let's
that'll
hope
be
it
a
goes well.
perfect Comic. No, that's going to be a perfect Comic-Con screen. I think that's going to be play to the crowd. Perfect.
I
Yeah.
can't swear though, so I'm a little
You can't
nervous.
swear?
At Comic-Con?
Before 5 p.m., they told me it's got to be PG rated.
Wow.
We actually, there's a shot, the clip that we're showing, because they turned down 3 clips, because it was too graphic, so they finally said the 4th clip, and it's the fight between Graham and Noah in the lobby when Graham goes back to the Institute, and there's a scene where Graham's got a big cut in his leg, and Noah pushes in on it, and blood shoots out, and he goes, "Oh, fuck you!" And they go, "All right, you got to bleep that out." So now it's like Graham's Graham's sitting there and no goes, fuck you, but it goes, bleep you.
Oh, really? Oh, so
And
they're
they were
going to
like,
play
wow.
it like that?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
it makes it, because like we did one where it was muffled, where it just muffles it out and it's like, you. And then it's like, bleep, and it feels a little more provocative. I
Yeah,
guess.
it makes like
I'm
some
surprised
kid
they
will
would
be like, I
bother.
want to see that.
Right? Yeah.
Why
But
didn't
they
they
were
just
like,
put
I'm
you
not
late at
supposed
night?
to.
It sounds even worse.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Who
But
knows?
like we tried doing the bathroom fight with the
Yeah, yeah.
hallway raise up crosscut and the axe through the head.
Yeah, that's a
and
good sequence.
They wouldn't do any of that, so they went
Wow.
with this, and then it said before 5 p.m. it's got to be PG, and I'm just like, oh god,
But you're showing
you're
the whole
asking the
film.
wrong fucking person.
No,
it's,
clips.
Yeah.
What's the panel about?
It's called Under the Radar, and it's
Right.
4 upcoming movies that were hits on the festival circuit. It's Chuck Palahniuk's new adaptation Lullaby. This movie Slash does at South by, the Ty West movie In the Valley of Violence, and then Mind's Eye.
Cool.
So we're going to present like an exclusive clip, and I'll talk a little about the movie.
Better than being on a panel called On the Way Down.
True.
So well done,
no,
sir.
but what's cool is that's in Hall H. It's in the big room.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So-
Lots of
showcase.
unsuspecting little Marvel and Star Wars fans are going to see Noah Segan get.
I don't want to wrap up for
Good.
because there's something I didn't ask because I didn't know Graham also directed something recently.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything about it or even what you're doing. All I saw on Facebook a couple of times is I'm making a movie, and I remember going, "Oh, cool, Graham's making a movie," but I don't know what you were doing.
I got to
So-
break that scoop. just saying.
Yeah, Rob broke the scoop on Blumhouse.com. Thank you, Rob, by the way.
Well, of course. Thank you.
Yeah, I wrote and directed a film. It's called Sequence Break. It stars Chase Williamson from John Dies at the End,
And your co-star in Beyond the Gates.
and
Oh, that's
yes,
right, that's
yes,
right,
Your
yeah.
brother, a movie we really like and we'll talk about in a few months.
Yeah, and Fabienne Therese, who was also in John Dies at the End, but in Southbound and Teenage Cocktail and a bunch of stuff, and it's sort of talking a lot about Cronenberg. It's a sort of metaphysical sci-fi horror film about a guy who encounters a very strange arcade machine.
Cool.
And
Is it set in a different time period?
it's set present day,
Uh-huh.
but lots of goopy biomechanical mutations and hallucinations and things like that. It's really awesome. We're in post right now. I'm super excited about it. Everybody's great in it. And
So you're going to be the Yuzna to his Gordon? Is that what's going on?
I would
'Cause I
love-
heard Goopy.
Is that the analogy?
I would love
I
to
heard
be.
Goopy.
Brian used the.
Well, you know how I feel about Yuzna. I'm a big...
So you're the
Oh,
director
yeah.
of Almost Human 2. Is that what we're saying?
We gotta discuss this.
Brian
We'll
of Almost
discuss it.
Human?
We'll discuss it. I prefer part 3s, so I'll hold off till part 3. If
Right.
I think Jarrett called part 2. So
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Unfortunately.
Son of the
Did you ever think about that? A sequel to... I mean, because Almost Human obviously ends at a point where it feels like a sequel would just start again.
Yeah, I have a really cool idea for one, but, I guess if the market demands it. My idea for the sequel
I love
would
that
be
idea.
that, I guess not spoiling because it's the opening scene, but, Graham is in the ambulance and you realize that the thing went inside of him, so he's brought into the hospital, and then he's in the morgue, and suddenly Graham's body raises up and starts infecting everybody in the morgue, so it's like Halloween 2 in the hospital, but the morgue turns into a giant cocoon where all these aliens pop out of it.
Nice.
And then I was thinking of a way to resurrect the headless Josh somehow too. Maybe
Uh-huh.
maybe just have him walk around with a head. I don't know. Or it's like it could be Ramirez carrying
fun.
around his head.
Wow.
Sounds fun.
That would be fun. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I have a whole thing for part 3 mapped out. It's really like intricate, and Barbara Crampton's in it. And it's gonna be great.
It's actually a prequel. It takes place
It's a
in
prequel.
1895,
Yeah.
Maine.
The origins of the alien.
It's like From Dusk Till Dawn 3, basically.
Oh, wow.
From Dust Till Dawn 3 meets The Witch. That's
Yeah,
what.
I kind of
Yeah,
like
that's
From
what it
Dusk Till Dawn 3, but it's been years.
Wow.
But
Okay.
I remember
It's
sort
From
of
Dusk Till
liking
Dawn 3 meets The Mangler 3.
Oh. Mike Williams'
Mike Williamson
favorite
is
movie.
really into it.
it. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
He got Ultrawood.
Well, I mean, we always ask people, obviously you guys are always kind of keeping up with what's going on in horror in general because you're big fans, but what's the sort of stuff that's exciting you these days? Like what, either films or filmmakers, or do you go back to some of the older stuff to kind of get re-inspired?
Gosh, well, I just told Elric I just started watching Penny Dreadful.
Oh, okay.
Finally.
I'm behind. I
which
gotta
is
check it out.
awesome. I
Yeah.
love it. I'm so excited.
Is that the one with Josh Hartnett?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't watch it just based on the
that
the billboards of Josh Hartnett
That's
in a
how
weird
I
wig.
felt.
Like,
No,
It's,
no,
you
that's
gotta
how I
give it a
felt. I'm
shot. It's
telling
way
you.
better than you think it's gonna be. It's really good.
It's
That-
a really, it's a surprising piece of work.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what I've watched recently. I've watched a lot of older stuff. I've watched a lot of Videodrome recently, just in prep for my film. And
But you're also from a unique, because even if you're making movies, you're still an actor, and I feel like an actor, especially if they're an actor and a fan of this kind of genre, you have to be watching this work going, oh yeah, I'd really like to work with that person because I'm curious
totally.
what that would be. You know?
Yeah, totally.
Who is making stuff right now that you would be really curious to work with just to see what would happen?
Oh,
What would spark?
Gosh. That's a very good question.
Here's
We'll
your
rattle off
chance.
people and you say, nah.
They're all listeners.
Nah.
So
I'll
no,
say
I know.
Wingard, you say no. Okay, not Wingard. Sorry, Adam.
No, all those guys.
Silas, all right.
I mean, like seriously, I just got the invitation in the mail. Finally, I'm really excited to watch that.
Oh, yeah.
I really love all of Ty West's stuff. Everything he does, I think is brilliant. I can't wait to see In the Valley of Violence. I think of the indie stuff that I've seen recently. I mean, Starry Eyes came out, I guess, last year.
Oh yeah.
Last year.
No, Starry
2
Eyes.
years ago
A couple
now.
years ago.
And it's like phenomenal.
And I love their segment in Holidays.
Oh yeah, and Holidays.
Those guys are great.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of really great stuff that's being made right now. I mean, I just watched Tex Montana Will Survive,
Yeah.
I saw it too.
Jeremy Gardner's film.
Love it.
Super fun.
And you know what? It gets better on repeat viewings because I watched it the first time. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And then I forgot the physical copy because I contributed to the Kickstarter. And my roommate walked in the middle. He's like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Just sit down for a few minutes." And it is really fucking funny.
Yeah.
It is really good.
It was great. Yeah. It was funny because I got the physical copy because for the same reason. I was a contributor, and my wife is very skittish now whenever I say, no, it's not a horror movie, it's a comedy. Because I convinced her to watch Cheap Thrills because I said, it's not a horror movie, it's a comedy. Now, Cheap Thrills, being one of the most brilliant genre films of the last however long.
Oh, yeah.
That she watched it and she goes, Graham, this is not a comedy. I am really unhappy with you right now. And so then, as that, the blowback from that has continued. She never believes me when I say something's a comedy. So I convinced her, I showed her like a clip from Tex Montana, and she went, okay. And she had met Jeremy, and she was like, okay, alright, I'll watch it. And we had a great time watching it. I think, I've been very fortunate enough to now work with him a couple of times, but Mickey Keating, I think is a guy that has a tremendous amount of vision, and, even though he got the shit kicked out of him by Joe, I think that he's, his stuff.
What's his favorite? Regardless of working with him, what of his films is the one you cite as?
Probably Darling.
Darling?
Probably
Okay.
Darling. Yeah, I Carnage Park is phenomenal. And I love it's the thing about his movies.
Elric would disagree with you.
Yeah, I didn't. Carnage Park. I haven't seen Darling yet, but Carnage Park didn't light my fire.
Well, Darling is way more your style. That's the thing too, is that
He's
every
tried
one
a
of
lot
his
of different
movies
things. I've noticed
is
that.
so different.
Yeah.
And but I think probably Darling. It's such a specific, like, unique
And that's
thing.
Lauren Carter.
Lauren Ashley Carter.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
really good.
I wanna see
Yeah.
that one,
As an actress. Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm really excited with what's going on in genre movies right now. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff happening, and a lot of people just making big, bold choices. And what more could you ask for as a genre fan or as an actor?
Joe, any of your contemporaries that you're...
Who do you hate?
Well,
Who do you hate, Joe? Just start with that.
Because
Who do
you're
you
pretty
hate?
honest.
Jesus.
so-
All right, let's. We got another 2 hours. And,
I'll just start with names and you say yay or nay. Eli Roth.
no, I mean,
Eli Roth.
I might be.
Eli Roth.
Listen,
Cabin
we-
Fever is
we've
one of my
gotta-
biggest influences of all time.
Have
I
you
got
seen the
first
Cabin
novel.
Fever remake yet?
I'm waiting for it to hit Netflix.
All right.
I
got the Blu-ray here.
I'm really good friends with Travis Zarwini. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
I love the original Cabin Fever. I just don't know why I know why they did what they did from a
Business
legal
standpoint?
standpoint,
Yeah.
but it just doesn't interest me. So I will eventually see it. I'm gonna wait till it comes to Netflix. Eli's definitely was one of my favorite filmmakers. I'm excited to see him get back into the groove of directing. I didn't like Green Inferno that much, but I thought Knock Knock was a step up, and I feel like he's...
Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
get
Let's
it?
put this in bronze. That Green Inferno was not great, but Knock Knock is like a nice
I
little movie.
liked Green Inferno a lot.
You and
I
Mike
I think
did.
Green
I
Inferno
did.
is passable once the plane crashes. I think Knock Knock is incredible up until
Yeah.
the threesome happens, and then
Yeah.
it falls off.
I think Green Inferno, you have to watch it going, I am going to see some mindless gore action. and then you
But
get
every
it.
Yeah, but
gore
the
shot is
drama's
an
so
insert
silly.
too. Like,
His
who
drama,
cares?
his
Who
drama's
cares? All right,
just-
look,
I care.
Eli is one of my biggest influences. I don't want to talk
Okay.
that shit about Grin Inferno because I didn't like Grin Inferno, but
And we still might get him on the show one day.
I hope that
And we'll talk about Knock Knock.
I like this stuff.
I'm
I think
very ex-
Hostel's fantastic.
I'm very
really
excited
like
love
about this
Hostel.
next movie.
Hostel 2's even better.
I may be biased, but I
fine.
think Mickey Keating's obviously a phenomenal filmmaker.
If you
switches
hadn't
up
beaten
every
his
time.
ass, if he'd beaten your ass, would you say the same thing, or what do you think?
No.
No, probably not. I didn't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I honestly, I know I'm gonna get shit for this, but I feel like we're like in a weird spot with horror where like I literally 3 people have asked me over the past 3 months what's your favorite horror movie the past 4 years, and I can't come up with like there's not like there's a lot of good stuff. I think It Follows is great. I think the Maniac remake is fucking great, but nothing that's been like, oh wow, like nothing that's affected me like High Tension or Inside did 10 years ago. Like Inside and High Tension to me, like as I feel like everything I watched up until I was a teenager was something that already existed, and then Inside and High Tension was something that I watched as a new product, and I was like, oh my god.
I agree. I think
right.
Descent, High
The-
Tension,
I would
and
put the Descent there,
Inside.
too.
Those
Yeah.
3, I do think, are the last one. And I think the difference is like a sense of urgency to the film, where like it's intense, like takes kind of like the second half of Chainsaw, where it's intense and it's about survival. And then everything since then, even the ones I love, like I love It Follows. I thought The Witch was really well made. Yeah, Babadook's a solid, well made movie, but they don't never have urgency, and it's never about survival. It's
Yeah.
more like a story that has a nice, clean ending, like a fairy tale almost. Versus urgency.
I also feel like
mean,
a lot of, I mean, I guess this is true for all of horror, but I feel like a lot of horror recently is very influenced by contemporary horror. So it's like every horror movie that comes out is influenced by horror movies that weren't that good 3 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, where in the 80s they were influenced, it's like, oh, everybody's making gory-ass monster slasher movies, so that's cool, but it's like, now everybody's making lame ghost movies, and those were at their peak 5 years ago, so why are we keeping retreading them, you know what I mean? And I feel like there just needs to be a new direction again. That's why I appreciated It Follows, because I thought it was really great filmmaking along with a new idea. It's like, yeah, everybody gives it shit because it doesn't make sense, but who the fuck cares? It's a horror movie. If you
it's like
attach
that's
yourself.
scary.
Yeah, a
That
lot
can
of
be
them
scary.
make sense.
Sense is such a weird thing to tie
like,
yourself
the
to.
paranormal,
you know?
the supernatural, that shit doesn't make sense.
No.
Like, that's what's
Yeah.
scary about it. So I really like It Follows. I really liked The Witch, but I don't feel like The Witch is like a masterpiece. But it is a very solid movie.
Yeah.
Well, it's so hard too because I feel like so much of these movies, It Follows, Babadook, Witch, all those movies were so hyped that it's almost impossible
To live up to it.
Yeah, you just can't. And as a genre fan, I really try to go in going, forget what you've heard, but you can't forget what you heard.
Yeah.
You know, it was like The Shallow. I just saw The Shallows.
I
And-
loved The Shallows.
Really?
I thought it was okay.
I love Blake Lively's.
You got to see it in the theater. It's like
Yeah, I
It
want
was
to.
it was fine, but everybody was saying it's the best shark movie since Jaws, and you know you're going okay, and I go in and I see it and like it was fine. It was fine. It was super fun. I'm glad there's a shark horror movie out in cinemas
Well,
right now.
we're probably going to watch Bait 3D right after this. Just so you know.
Great.
So
You know, but it's like but again, it's hard. It's impossible nowadays to.
Well, and also
to
it's a
be
funny time now.
off of
Like
that.
where did you see it? Like when did you see it? Like I saw It Follows at the AFI screening. It hadn't screened, no hype. I mean, all I knew is it had played at Cannes. So my brain was like, how the fuck did a little horror film by the guy who made The Myth of the American Sleepover play at Cannes? So I went in thinking this is going to be kind of interesting, and it was great. And so if you see it early enough, and I think that's why some of them get such big buzz from a festival, right?
Yeah.
Like The Witch, seeing that at a festival with knowing nothing, the period specific detail is kind of outrageous.
Totally.
Like you're like, holy shit. But then seeing it being called the best, scariest movie of all time, that you can't live up to.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
These are
Doesn't
all
exist, yeah.
great movies.
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
great movies, but you know, it's like I mean. And again, like we talked about The Descent, I will never in my life forget when I saw The Descent at 34th Street Theaters in New York and not knowing anything about it and going, oh, we're going to go see this silly horror movie. I, to date, have never been as scared in a movie theater as I was.
Yeah, it's
seeing
definitely.
The Descent.
I think post 2000 is like one of the best films.
Yeah, absolutely.
made. It's
I
just-
mean, and honestly, like, I took for granted too because I was in high school and I was kind of just like, oh, this is cool, like Devil's Rejects, Hostel,
Yeah, you had a good
Saw,
run.
Cabin Fever, High Tension, like, oh, cool. But I'm like, God, we were spoiled because, like, there's
none of that shit
nothing
would
now.
make it,
Yeah,
None of that shit would make
Well,
it.
so it's
High
coming back.
Tension came out on 2200.
I know. I saw it in theaters, and
I know.
I'll never forget it.
35 millimeter.
It felt really taboo that being on a big screen.
35 millimeter prints of High
Yeah.
Tension were created. Like,
The dude is fucking a skull in a skull fuck in the opening sequence of that film,
Yeah.
and then
pretty
literally
hardcore.
kills humans' brains, and that it's amazing.
And also,
But-
I'm not like of the like I'm not old enough where like I could seek out movies like, oh, this is like, this is banned. So for me, High Tension, because it came out 2 years later here, like High Tension, Cradle of Fear, which isn't a very good movie, Irreversible. Like, there was this very select group of movies when I was like 14 where it's like, I have to seek these movies out. I'm going to go to a convention. And I actually went to a convention, and it took like 7 or 8 tries until I could find the uncut high tension, because everybody had the R-rated cut. Or
right.
And like, I would be like, show me the closet scene, show me the bureau scene. So like, those scenes were spoiled for me, but it was so cool to go around to these conventions and have my dad drive me like 2 hours. Like, go to this horror convention together. And then like, I'm like looking for high tension, and like, he's sitting next to me, and I'm like watching this thing of a bureau like decapitate somebody. I'm like, can I have $8, Dad? Because I want to buy high tension on this DVD-R.
So your dad's awesome. Clearly.
Well, my parents are really young, so the cool thing is my dad was so young. My parents had me in high school. Let's just get that out of the way. But, so like, my dad was such a huge movie fan that he would have these VHSs where it was like, oh, Basket Case, Pet Sematary, and then I'll tape Drop Dead Fred and T2. Yeah. So I learned how to work the VCR when I was like 4, and I'm like, I want to watch Drop Dead Fred, but it's at the beginning of the video, so I gotta watch Pet Sematary and Basket Case first. Like, so I would just watch like these 8-hour tapes as a 5-year-old, and I'd be like, wait, Basket Case is awesome. I want to watch Basket Case.
I think Basket Case and Drop Dead Fred are like a perfect double when I think about it. They got some things in common.
Like, I'm just like 4 years old, and my dad wakes up halfway through the third movie. Oh, you watching TV? I'm halfway through Basket Case, Dad, and I'm fucked up for life.
Wow, I love that.
But I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for my early horror education.
Yeah, if you didn't get fucked up, we wouldn't be here drinking your whiskey.
Yeah. No, it was an exciting time. I remember seeing both High Tension and Descent before they came out in the U.S. I got imports of them somehow.
Yeah, because they both came out years ahead of time in the
and
US.
just hearing all that hype, in the early days of the internet, where they're like, this is this movie, it's the next best thing. So
You'll laugh where I saw The Descent. The thing that got me, it wasn't Fangoria, it was Film Comment, who never write about horror. And it came to New Zealand, and I'm like flicking through this Film Comment, so it's all high art house. And then there's this, I think it was Maitland McDonough writes this article how this is the greatest feminist thing ever, and this film's so fucking great. And the images in it where she's drenched in blood coming out of, I was like so jazzed to see that movie. And then I saw it, and it's one of the first films I've seen in a long time that didn't fail that hype that I had built in my head. It like completely exceeded it, and so I was like stoked.
I haven't seen it in a couple of years. I want to rewatch it.
It holds up so good.
Yeah.
Every time I watch it, I probably watch it once a year, and it's just like, it's unbelievable, that movie.
Do you know why I waited so long though? Because there was a listing randomly on one of these Blu-ray websites that Lionsgate was putting out the Descent 3D. And I actually asked Neil about it. I was like, do you know that the Lionsgate is putting out your movie in 3D? And he's like, no. Okay. That's pretty cool. So they were going to do, cause there was like 5 titles from their library that they were upgrading to 3D. And that was one of them, but it never happened. I guess it got canceled somewhere along the way, but.
Oh, weird.
Who did cause I still have my old DVD that I bought, the year it came out.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it on? Do they have like a really good blue of it?
It's Lionsgate.
It's Lionsgate.
Yeah, they put it on blue. Yeah.
I should get that.
Wow.
It's so good.
Well, anyways, so we've been drinking excessively.
And now you did 3/4 of the bottle of J&B.
We gotta kill this. We gotta
Couple
kill
beers.
this bottle.
We gotta kill the whiskey.
Let's have a little more.
I'm pretty impressed.
I think we should watch some 3D movies and continue this conversation. But The Mind's Eye, August 5th, it's out now.
Well, no, it's not out now. It's August 5th.
Well, when this.
Actually, no, we're gonna
When
play
does
this.
it? When does it?
No, we're gonna hold this one for.
The week it comes out.
Okay.
It's coming out this week, damn it.
We're only taping this
So
because
we're not episode 10?
It's
No.
July.
I was
It's
all
July.
excited. I was like-
11.
Well, it's like I was like, oh,
we're
cool.
gonna make you one of those 0.5 episodes that they like to do when I'm not around.
I was telling my friend, I'm like, yeah, I think that we're doing the next episode. And then, like, yesterday, I see you guys, like, just recorded an episode of podcast. I'm like, oh, well, I guess we're not the next episode because they're already recorded 3.
We'll play it when you're in VOD.
I'm not editing any of this because I don't care.
No, this is realism. This is real life, man.
Well, regardless, by the time you hear this,
Are we going to hear Ryan's cuts this week? Where's Ryan's cuts?
I don't know. He's been
he's in
missing.
Fantasia.
He's at Fantasia now, so
Yeah.
whatever. Fuck that.
He hasn't quit. But he's just missing.
No, all right. Clean soundbite.
No, I think keep all of it. People love this shit.
August 5th. We love the movie. We had a lot of fun with it. I just think it's a lot of fun. It's better than Scatter's Cop. That's for sure. I love Scatter Cop. Yeah, I mean, we're just looking at, you're starting the next thing soon, I hope. And we're just, I loved Almost Human. I love Mind's Eye, and just looking forward to whatever you got, coming up next.
Cool, man.
And hopefully it inspires some of you to make it by hand, man. Make your horror films with
It's
people
possible.
you know, and it's possible to do it. Especially when you watch this film, you'll see how possible it is. I
It's
think
better
that's the key.
to make a movie for $7,000 than to wait around waiting for $500,000.
Yeah,
because
that's good advice.
There
Just
you
go do it.
having a movie of any sort is better than having an idea.
Yeah.
So
There you go.
That's my advice.
Yeah, no one remembers the idea, so I like it. Okay. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks.
And good
Thank
luck,
you
Graham,
guys
with
so
your
much.
film too. What was your film called?
Sequence
Again?
Break.
Sequence Break.
Sequence Break. And when's that coming out?
Oh, who knows?
November 10th, 2016.
You heard it here first. All right, there we go.
I think we might hold this interview for your release date.
There we go.
God damn it.
We'll have you back for that one, for sure.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much.